Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Hi, everyone. Glad to have you, all our listeners. And we've got a wonderful show today. We've got Grace King High School's head football coach that'll be calling in. What a great guy. We're going to mention his name in the show. We also have our recruiting part 2. Last week we had 6 colleges we previewed. This week the other 6, which is phenomenal. We've got an in-depth overview of the recruiting. We kind of rank them a little bit. 6 colleges. This is the last of it. It's our part 2 of the 12 total colleges. We also have Charlie Cavell, who's from Byrd High School, the voice of the Byrd Yellow Jackets for the last 23 years. This is the guy that does play-by-play on Friday and Thursday night for Byrd High School football in Shreveport, Louisiana. We also talk about basketball and baseball, and we also talk about coaching changes at the college football level, which is really, really good. And we're going to go ahead and go to our first segment and get into our talk of our recruiting of the colleges in Louisiana this year. Yeah, Tulane coach Willie Fritz, the head coach, has done a great job, by the way. I thought he would get a job. Hey, great things for Tulane fans. He's back. He survived. Your fans survived worrying about losing a great coach, because the good thing is you don't want a coach that nobody wants. You want a coach that everybody wants, right? That means he's a good coach. And the Tulane staff has done a good job recruiting. I don't think this is the greatest class in the history of school. It's not better than Sean King and Meweldy Moore and those guys, Roydell Williams. That was special. That was a proven group, right?
Yeah.
But it's heading that way, and it's potentially, I think, going to pay off in 220 because they've had 3 really good years.
And this is the first time I think they made back-to-back bowl games in their program's history.
And the kids that are growing up playing ball, going into junior high, it takes 2 or 3 years to get their attention to go, you know what? Tulane's got a good program in New Orleans. And if you're practicing 10 minutes down the road and you're at a school and you go, you know what? It might be good to stick around and play for Tulane. It's a good school. It's a great school. Great degree. And by the way, they got a great coach. And it might, and some of those kids are buying in. One of those kids that I like a lot is defensive end Angelo Anderson from John Curtis. I think he's SEC good.
He took over that state championship game and 2 years ago against Cavell High. He just dominated.
Well, he's got the quickness and the twitch to be a DN, and I think he could be a buck linebacker DN in the SEC. And he's going to go to Tulane. If he doesn't start, he'll play. He'll be that 2-deep guy that's quality, He's 6'2", 240, 245. He can run. He's strong. And then you bring in another local kid from Holy Cross, Josh Remedich, who's a big old lineman, raw, but man, he moves so well. He's 6'5", about 280. Could be a tackle, could be a guard, could be a center. They get Rashad Green, another great old lineman from U-High in Baton Rouge. They could have went to a lot of places. He's 6'3", about 305. He can move well. Could be a guard, could be a center. And then they go to Destrehan, another, I call it a local school in the River Parish area. They get Noah Telenich. What a great player. Noah could have went anywhere. And in my opinion, he was LSU good. When I mean LSU good, not a project and not a red shirt.
And you saw how Destrehan really slowed down the KDN's vaunted, Veer game, and he was a big reason why that they were able to really kind of shut it down.
I watched Kyle Williams play in high school from Ruston, who ended up going to LSU, playing, 14, 15 years for the Bills?
A long time.
Right.
Successful career.
Kyle Williams was 6'1" on his best day, about 280. Played nose guard, and he has more sacks than any nose guard in the history of the Buffalo Bills organization. Nose guards don't get sacks. And I think Kyle had over 50 or 60 sacks in his career, which is phenomenal. Noah, to me, is another Kyle Williams. But he's about an inch taller, about 6'2", 280, and he's mean. And he's got that twitch. He's strong. He's going to come in and play. And I predict he starts at some point during the fall season. They're going to be able to build a front wall with him and Angelo Anderson. That's exciting. Now, Tulane's not done. So they're going to get some portal guys. They still need a quarterback in the portal. So it's not going to be a final grade. They did sign their quarterback for the future, Justin Iabita.
That was a big pickup.
From Country Day. I love Justin. He is a phenomenal player. But just like the kid LSU signed from Georgia,
Max Johnson,
they're very similar. They're both 6'5", they're both 215, they're both highly advanced, high IQ of the game, great arm, good feet in the pocket, but just needs a year.
And he can run when he needs to. He can make a play if he has to run with the football.
And if they have to, Tulane, if they don't get that portal quarterback they want, Justin could start, but you would rather redshirt him.
Yeah.
And then he's going to be a phenomenal player. So from a whole class standpoint, it's not the greatest ever, but the top 5 players in the class.
They got some good pieces
It's
to build around.
It's a top 3 class probably that I've seen. Now, we can't call it the greatest ever because Sean King became a starting quarterback in the NFL.
Weldy
Moore. And Roydell Williams. They're all starters in the NFL from one class. So let's see how it works out. But I really believe that Fritz started out recruiting his first 2 years. He couldn't get the local kids. He had to go get kids from Florida and Alabama.
He had to go out of state and
then he had to get them where he wouldn't fight in Georgia or Florida and Alabama and Auburn. He had to go against Southern Miss and Duke and, Samford and Troy and those schools in Central Florida, South Florida, UL, Tech, win some battles. Really have a lot of respect for Coach Willie Fritz. And he makes his staff work hard because that's a good coach. He makes them go out there and work it.
You can see the culture really changing just off the last year with Coach Fritz.
And the stadium. They got the new, I call it new.
It seems like everybody's just buying into what they're doing, like fans, not just the players, but the fans and the community.
And look, when these kids stay in Louisiana, I think it not only helps Tulane, but it helps LSU. Because you're keeping kids in state. They have friends coming up behind them that want to play with the same team. You're keeping the greater players from leaving the state. And look at it this way. Let me throw this example out. Patrick Surtain went to Southern Miss. Yep. All right. Tulane they weren't winning when he came out.
Mm-hmm.
He played at Edna Carr. If he doesn't go to Southern Miss and he plays at Tulane, where does his son go?
Probably LSU.
There you go. But since you go to Southern Miss, you're not tied to Louisiana school.
And he was coaching out in Florida. He was playing out in Florida.
Right. In Southern Miss, you get, not far from Alabama, right? Hattiesburg. You start becoming friends with Alabama, coaches and stuff. And this is how this works. That's real life, right? And so I think it helps when kids stay in state. And it's a product of LSU taking 5 players. Angelo Anderson could play for LSU.
He could.
Telnich can play for LSU. Justin Iabita can play for an LSU. Might be painful for some LSU fans to hear that. I don't know why it would be.
You can only take 25, so
right.
You just got to choose.
But do you want
wisely.
You want them going to Tulane, or you want them going to Southern Miss?
Yeah, I'd rather let them go to Tulane, stay in state.
Yeah, and they need to get that older quarterback, and I think they will. They'll find somebody. And then maybe we'll say this class might be the greatest ever. Maybe they get 3 transfers that are phenomenal to finish this class out. We'll see what happens there. And then, look, let's go ahead and turn our attention to Grambling. Coach Fobbs has done a phenomenal job with Grambling.
He won a couple SWAT championships, won a national championship. He's done a really good job in his early years, but now the last 2 years, Southern's kind of being him out for the conference. So we'll see how they can.
He's lost some momentum.
Yeah, lost a little bit of momentum. But let's see what they can do.
And he's always relied on transfers. This guy doesn't sign like 15 signees from high school. He signs more like 5 high school kids and like 10 junior college guys.
Devontae Kincaid from Ole Miss,
He takes 5 transfers. Now he's doing more portal transfers. So to look at Grambling's class in 2020, you can't judge it for another month because his best players are going to be from the portal in another 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. So they're going to take another 7, maybe 8 kids from the portal that are probably the who's who, could be the next Kincaid, like you said, Jace, from Ole Miss. That type of deal. But just looking at who they got, Javon Carter, very underrated player from Neville. Trenton Grow, very, very high potential guy from West St. John, tall receiver, DB. Rian Cotton, I love him, from Central High, linebacker. Had 300 career tackles.
Yeah, started his career at West Feliciana.
Had 150 tackles his freshman year for West Feliciana. And Marquise McKnight was a kicker punter find from Madison Prep in Baton Rouge. He's 6 foot 240, a big kicker.
Yeah, he plays on the O-line for them too, but I definitely remember Marquise McKnight.
And he took a bunch of kids. The big guy that I know, Redondus Estes, he's from Illinois, came from Illinois, and he was at Minnesota. This guy's had 2 colleges, and he went to Riverside. I mean,
yeah,
4 colleges, right?
Well traveled.
Yeah. 6 foot 180 corner, but hey, final stop, runs a 4.5. They also got Brian Powell, who's from ASA in New York, junior college, originally from DeKalb, Georgia. 140 tackles, 6 foot 3, about 215, come in and play. But again, I would say, though, this is not an A class. But then again, we can't,
as of now,
we can't rank it for another 6 to 8 weeks.
It's like you have a B- on your midterm, but you don't finish in the rest of the school.
I give it a C.
Year.
I give it a C-. That could become a B+. But it's not an A class like the couple we had the first 2 years. Southern took a little of that momentum away from him.
At first, it was when they got there. Grambling had a lot of momentum with the championships and recruiting, but now Dawson Odoms and Southern's they're taking a lot of that momentum away because of their success the last 2 years.
Yeah, and they say 25, but some of these guys are tops, so it's not a full 25. And just so you know, whoever's listening, when you look at the 1AA classes especially, they let these kids put their name in the class that are not necessarily getting grant money, They're tops guys, some of them. So it's deceiving on the total number of scholarships. So don't look at that and say, okay, I'm just throwing out a number. Southeastern might say 18. Mm-hmm. Might be really 12. The other kids are walking on for tops.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that go on.
Remember, 63 scholarships for 1AA school, 85 for a D1 school. We'll be right back with more recruiting with the Louisiana Colleges.
We'll be right back on the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen. Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brecheen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Scouting Report with Lee Brecheen, Jace, LeJeune, our producer. We're going over the state colleges, and I am ranking them, I guess. I'm ranking them for what their potential full level was. And look, I'm going to give a lot of A's out today because LSU only signed 5 players from Louisiana. What does that mean? The rest of the players were left for the colleges. And if anybody ever says Louisiana had a bad crop of players, I will not agree with you. It's what level are you talking about? I mean, there's several players that are 1AA D1 in Louisiana, and it always will be that level. A lot of guys fall because of grades, and a lot of guys fall because they are guys that are going to reach their potential in a year or two.
They might have like an injury or something, and they have to miss like all the.
Well, they're not polished yet.
Yeah,
so
stuff like that happens as well.
And what does polish mean? It means that the kid needs another year to gain more weight, stronger, bigger, faster. And what happens, a lot of these kids go to 1AA schools or even D2 schools, and they gain 30 pounds in an off season to 6 months. Some of them grow taller, they get faster, they get more mature. And all of a sudden it's like, how did that kid end up at that school? Well, he looked D1, but he wasn't polished. And then it only takes a year.
Yeah, a lot of times 5 stars become 2 stars, and 2 stars becomes 5 stars.
Well, some of these polished guys they don't bring it when they get to that level. And these other guys bring it, and they're like, I'm going to take your job. The rankings are over with. We're in college. It's over. No more stars. We're all one team. We're numbered 1 to 100. Well, nobody wears 100 unless you're a high school player from Shaw this year, the quarterback. But let's go ahead and continue on. We're going to talk about Nicholls State. Nicholls gets an A+.
It seems like Coach Rebo's been getting A+s every year since he's been there at Nicholls State.
But he has really found a way to dominate the portal. And what I mean by that, if you're from Louisiana, he's getting all the great Louisiana transfers. Like, he's out there. They must find out, like, the next hour the kid puts his name on the website. Jace and Rebo and them must be calling this guy within 30 minutes because they're getting, like, 4 or 5 kids in this class were Louisiana players coming back from a D1 school that are good players.
Yeah, a lot of SEC schools coming from.
I mean, you got Jeremy and James, who was at De La Salle from Tulane, who's a quality D tackle, 6'1", 290. I mean, you got Keenan Jones, who was starting at one time at safety for LSU, 6'3", 220. I mean, you've got, Arkansas's DB coming. You got a couple of Arkansas players coming in.
And the Devontae Jason just came in.
Tevin Bush from West Virginia, who played at O.P. Walker, who runs a 4.3.
He was part of that state championship team with the quarterback that we missed, Keaton Thompson.
Devontae Jason is all world.
Same school as well.
He could have went back to a D1 somewhere. He chose to come home. What's it tell you about Rebo and Nicholls State?
That he's got it going on right now, and he's really doing a great job promoting the program to these SEC D1 players to come and go down a level but compete for national championships at 1AA FCS level.
But the key is, to me, the most talented signee, high school signee, if he qualifies, if he can get his grades, Jaya Williams.
Yeah, Jaya Williams.
Jaya will be a superstar in the Southland Conference at running back. You can put that on record and stone from me.
Oh, yeah.
5'8", 180, special.
Yeah, trust me, my dad has seen him plenty of times.
And he's glad he's graduated.
Yes, he is very glad.
But Jaya Williams, the good thing about Nicholls, he can sit at Nicholls and then be eligible, like, basically redshirting. Hopefully he'll stay and not go to junior. If he does go junior college, everybody's going to offer him again. All the big guys, including LSU. His dad, Jermaine the Juice Williams, was pretty good at LSU.
He was.
Signees in the class. I like Chauncey Crum from St. Aug. Phenomenal running back or linebacker. See, Nicholls has 5 running backs coming back, so they don't really even need to play any of these running backs. That's how good they are right now in recruiting.
Yep.
DeAndre Keller, to me, was a phenomenal signee from St. James. He's an SEC D tackle, DN, 6'3", 270, runs a 4.8. Actually runs a 10.8, 100 meters, depending on what track meet. Corey Warren was a great running back from Pearl River.
Very underrated.
Very much. 5'10", 220. Again, they don't even need him.
Yeah, they got like Julian Gums and a bunch of guys like that.
They don't even need him. They're stockpiling. And then they go into Rummel and they get Malik Woodbury, who's phenomenal as a safety corner.
They Woodbury, go to, I think is his name.
Yeah,
yep.
they go to Acadiana and get their star quarterback, Keontae Williams.
Yep.
Keelan Williams' son from LSU.
Okay.
And then Keontae's probably going to be a safety at Nicholls. Was one of the best players on the Acadiana team. Very good player. They go to your old high school, Catholic High, and they get the leader of the defense, Hayden Shaheen, the linebacker, Mike linebacker. He's going to be another Evan Veron.
Yeah, a very underrated part of the Bears' defense this past year. And
Evan Veron from
Riverside Academy, he was a beast.
So they're cloning these guys. Then they get Shamar Smith, who's a phenomenal player from St. James, the quarterback, who can play 8 positions.
That is a big pickup for him.
Was committed to UT San Antonio D1, and when Frank Wilson got fired.
Left, I got fired, right.
This kid, I mean, I can't believe they get Shamar Smith. I mean, Shamar's Louisiana Tech starter day one.
I don't know how many quarterbacks in the state played quarterback and was also returning punts. So you don't see many of them out there in high school doing that. Yeah.
Ran a 10.5, 10.6, 100 meters. Leonard Kelly, you go out and get the 4-year starter, 2-time state champion from Edna Carr.
All he does is win games, yep.
And imagine this guy getting a little more polished as a passer. He's already a great athlete. He's got that Russell Wilson build, 5'10.5", 190.
So was Shamar Smith. He's kind of that
right
frame too.
This is the best class I've ever seen in my lifetime at Nicholls, looking at Nicholls.
Yeah, and they had a good one a couple years back when they got Sully Leach and Evan Veron. So this is another really good one.
This to me is just full of guys. And then you throw in Tyreek Boyd from Como, who's a great DB, and Pig Cage from Rummel, a great safety.
Yeah, Rummel had a bunch of them last year.
I'm blown away. And then Logan Wilcox, who I scouted at Central Lafourche, not ranked, but great blocker, 6'3", 230. I think he's a Power 5 tight end. Logan Wilcox, remember the name, tight end from in the backyard, Central Lafourche. But this is a phenomenal class. And then you throw in another sleeper, 2 sleepers. Javin Aguilar from Santa Maria, wideout. Tall, good-looking kid, 6'3". And then Zach Bernard from Lakeshore. Great lineman.
Yep.
Helped lead his team to the state championship 2 years ago as a sophomore starting defensive end. 6'2", 280, legit, can run.
That's Jacob's brother, right?
That's
Jacob
his
Bernard?
brother, yeah. Who's at ULL playing baseball and football. Another phenomenal player. And look, they're going to probably offer a couple more kids. Probably get another couple of more D1 transfers.
Yeah, they've definitely done their homework, for sure.
I don't think you can get this class any better. And, you know, if somehow this team might challenge for the championship in 1AA next year. Next year might be their year.
Very well could
I know they lose Chase Forcade.
That's a big loss. They lose.
But they've got some quarterbacks.
Guys, but, yep, they do. Andrew Robeson, and I believe, is it Lindsey Scott's there as well?
Lindsey Scott, and then you throw in Shamar Smith.
Shamar Smith and Leonard Kelly.
Oh, what a great fall camp of competition.
Interesting quarterback competition.
Man. Now, Sonny Jackson, who's a friend of mine, head coach at Nicholls way back, they had some great classes, but nothing like this. This is unbelievable. This is a D1 class. This is a Sun Belt, challenges ULL, who finished with the best class in the Sun Belt this year. We're going to get to them later. So we're going to go ahead and go to ULM Warhawks in Monroe, Louisiana. They haven't had really great seasons. They've been fighting, and grinding.
They've been on the edge, trying to get bowl eligibility.
Yeah, I mean, they're
right there.
They lose to Florida State, missing an extra point in this past year. That was really hard.
And they almost had a chance to beat UL as well.
Matt Viator knows what he's doing. And I think he can make it. It's just hard. They just need that.
They got a tough schedule as well.
They need a bowl season. And then it just changes everything. Winning changes everything. But for not having any of that, not a bad class. Garrett came in from West Monroe, hurt most of his senior year, great quarterback. I think the Zachary people will tell you that.
Yeah. He's playing that in the state championship year.
6'3", can move, can run. And then they get, I think, another sleeper quarterback, Hayes Crockett from Sterlington, who they didn't throw the ball at the school, but he's built like Stan Humphreys, who played for Southwood and UL
That's
Northeast.
Going back in the archives.
Northeast, and then San Diego Chargers in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But ULM, when you can sign 2 quality quarterbacks, both from North Louisiana, both 6'3", high school kids. The future's bright. And then they got some good players outside of Louisiana. It's a good class. I mean, now they're going to fill it in with some JC guys and also some portal guys.
Transfer portal guys.
And they have to do that until they win a bunch of games. That's how you got to build your team.
Yep.
And maybe 220 will be the year Viator and them will have a 7-win team somehow. It's hard because they play their
non-conference
is
schedule
phenomenal.
Is really tough.
You got like 2 brutal top 10 teams usually.
Like Auburn and like Florida State,
Alabamas of the world. It's really hard. And I'm rooting for Viator and them to break through.
You get to that bowl game.
Really am.
5-7 last year. They've been that close.
They've recruited well considering the win-losses.
Yep, they're right in there. So
we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about 2 more Louisiana colleges and how they did in recruiting.
We'll be right back on the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Make sure to tune in this week to Louisiana Football TV Magazine as host Lee Brecheen brings on big-time guests, recruits, coaches, you name it. You can catch the show on YourView, Channel 4 in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Lafayette, CW21 in Shreveport-Bossier City area, CBS in Lake Charles, ETEL in Ascension, and ETEL Vision in Houma, Lafourche. Check your area for local listings.
Okay, everyone, we're going to continue on. Lee Brecheen here with the Sports Scouting Report. Jace, LeJeune, our producer. We're going to continue talking about our Louisiana colleges and how they did in recruiting. Next up, Pineville, Louisiana College. This is what I got to explain before I get into their class. It's the only D3 school in the state. Okay, a lot of people don't know that. What is D3? D3 is a school, they don't give any financial aid, like money, for a full scholarship or a half scholarship. It's basically mostly TOPS or funding, that type of thing. But you're not getting a football scholarship.
It's not like a full ride.
Or even a half, or it's not even cut up. So
a quarter.
Quarter
ride.
Right. So the reason I say that is because even though a lot of kids committed, they didn't really sign. There's no signature to D3, meaning you have until August or whenever enrollment starts to enroll or not enroll, because you're not liable because you're not getting a scholarship. So everybody we talk about today, they could walk on anywhere, right? And now we hope they do go to Louisiana College because these coaches work their butt off, right, to get these kids to commit.
Yeah, they've done a really good job considering they have a new coach now.
Yeah.
They're starting the Andrew Maddox era because Justin Charles is now the coach at Holy Savior Menard.
And Alexandria, the high school. And there's some good-looking kids that we've seen play. I've scouted on this list that I think are great kids. I think a couple of them can play 1AA ball, and this is 3D ball, 3D3 ball. They got the kicker, Jamison Debuse from Winfield. He's looking to enroll. You got DB Sterling McKeithen from Lusher in New Orleans. Good player, good solid player. I like Wyatt Schuff from Iota. Big time O-lineman.
High on him.
6'3", about 320, I mean. Zackees Rogers from Captain Shreve, a late bloomer. Big, tall kid. Raw, like I said, raw. Kennery Turak from Westgate. Tough kid, kind of undersized, but great for D3. Scott Wisby, all-state linebacker from Rose Pine around Lake Charles. I think he's a great player for D3. And here's a guy that could go D1AA, Tyron Young from Thibodaux.
Yeah, that's a big pickup.
Big time, man. He's 5'10", 180, 4'5", could be a running back, could be a safety. Probably could play linebacker for them, D3. You got Kyrie Willis from Central Catholic, a good player. I like this one. Oren Carew from Carver. I've seen this kid play.
That's another good one.
He's, 5'11", 190, 4'5" guy. He's an NFL kind of guy that they're getting. Maybe he was not tall for the position for D1, just slipped through the cracks. Here's another big-time player, Antonio Sanders from East St. John, DB. Can flat-out run, 6'1", 180. Noah Breland from Franklinton, a tough linebacker. He fits the D3 level. And then I like this kid from Belle Chase, Shy Charles, 5'7", 5'8", 160, 4'5". He's a lockdown corner. He doesn't know he's small. He hits like he's 200. And that's the D3 guy. And, this guy might develop into a pro prospect one day. You never know. He might not be in 5'9", 175, running 4'4". And they go, well, why do you go? Because you go in, you're not as big as the football card shows 3 years later, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and look in the NFL, look how many D2, D3 guys that just go unnamed, and they just slip to the NFL, and they just blossom in the NFL.
Because the scouting report from colleges are you're too raw or you're too small, and then you grow or you get faster. And that's why you got D3, and I think it's a wonderful avenue for kids. Don't give up playing the sport. And I hope all of these kids enroll at Louisiana College, because if they do, this is an impressive list. There's about 5 of these kids that could go 1AA and actually start one day. And there's one other kid, John Berryhill from Carver, a great DB, 2 Carver studs. I mean, I don't think they've ever really reached into Carver High School. But really a good class. And I hope they can hang on to them. And with their fighting, like I said, what the coaches are fighting is that you can walk on to LSU or any of these other schools. Yeah,
it's not set in stone.
It's
like
non-bonding.
Right.
So, but I hope they all do enroll. And there's one other kid who was a late bloomer from West Jefferson, Shiloh Childs, wide receiver. I watched him, 5'11", about 170, 4'5" guy. A lot of speed in this class for a D3 class, Jace.
Yeah.
About 6 kids that run 4'5". They did their homework. Coach
They sure did.
And again, I hope they all enroll, and they're going to probably add some kids. They'll probably lose some of these kids. There's no number, so they can actually get 40 kids to come in.
Yep, they very could. So we probably won't find out until
the final toll.
Right, the final toll
until August 31st.
Yep, as late as it can be.
We're going to go ahead and continue on with our colleges. McNeese State. Well, they had
Frank Wilson era has started.
This is a tough spot for Frank Wilson, though. I mean, Frank was hired like late. We're talking about he didn't have time to open a booklet.
Really wasn't.
He didn't have time to say, "Can I look at the board on your board right now?"
He just saying, "Oh, here's the sign class." I mean,
because the McNeese State coach left to go to Syracuse.
Yes, Stroman Gilbert went to Syracuse.
All right, to be their offensive coordinator.
Yep.
And then Frank Wilson was let go by UT San Antonio as the head coach. But when you're getting hired in January, like late, and signing day is February, the 5th? Man, there's just no time. The good thing is there were some early signees to McNeese. And there's some quality players signed. They didn't finish, but I think, just like Frank was quoted in the paper, he's going to go transfer portal on all these guys that are left. So
considering the circumstances,
yeah,
it's pretty good.
I mean, if they have 8 scholarships left, it's going to be nothing but transfer portal guys. And that's really good, actually. Because nobody's going to have scholarships by that time, but McNeese and maybe LSU. But I like the early signee kid from Houghton High School around Shreveport, Kalon Chappell, defensive end. I think he's a stud. I love him. He's 6'3", 225, can run. He came on this year as a senior, put a little weight on. He looks like the real deal. I like Luke Howard. I thought Luke Howard was a phenomenal tight end for St. Thomas More. He got hurt missed the first 4 or 5 games, came back. For a 3-year period, this guy was one of the best tight ends in the state. And, his cousin is Walker Howard, the quarterback that's going to be a Parade All-American in about 2 years.
His uncle was a pretty good quarterback.
Jamie
himself.
Howard.
Yep.
Walker's dad.
Yep.
But Luke, I thought Luke would probably walk on to LSU because of all the family ties. But now he's going to join David LaFleur's son, who signed with McNeese last year.
Yep.
And you got 2 LSU type, second, third generation kids.
And look who the quarterback was this past year, Cody Orgeron.
There you go.
So another LSU tie.
The rest of the early signees were Texas kids. I don't know much about them, but McNeese,
Parker Orgeron.
Parker
Orgeron. Yep.
Parker and Cody. And,
yep.
But, these Texas signees, one thing McNeese does a good job on, they get those Texas kids in that golden triangle, which is that Beaumont, Orange, Port Neches area all the way to Houston, because it's not that far from Lake Charles. It's maybe 2.5 hours, 3 hours from Lake Charles. And then Orange and Beaumont's even closer. And then, the late signee I really like is Rakeem Starks from Helen Cox, DB. This guy's a big-time corner, and I know Coach Wilson has ties on the West Bank, right?
Yep.
So he knew the Helen Cox coaches. He was recruiting Starks to UT San Antonio. This kid can come in and start. He's a gem. I like running back Josh Parker out of Ural High School, Catholic High School.
High, yep.
Josh Parker can play some football.
Yep.
He doesn't hand time like they want him to.
Yeah, he might not look
He's not the huge deep running back.
But he's a good football player.
I love him. I think he's going to be phenomenal. And for Frank Wilson to get Josh Parker late, I mean, this guy was probably going to walk on to Tech and start one day, before that happens. So, I think it's a class that's not finished. You can't rank it. Frank's holding the scholarships for some good-looking D1 transfers. We'll see what happens. Frank can recruit.
Oh, we know that, especially in the New Orleans area.
We'll see how he coaches in Lake Charles and how that works out. It's going to be rough because, they're not as talented on the roster as they were, Jace. So there's definitely there's needs to be some talent brought in to bring them back. So
the good old days when McNeese State was competing for championships
every year.
Yep.
But now Southeastern's become very good. Northwestern's coming back. Nicholls State. Sam Houston State's really good.
Right.
Abilene Christian's really good. Stephen F. Austin's really good. And now Incarnate Word's very good. It's a different world for McNeese.
Southland's really tough.
And now Matt Viator's recruiting Lake Charles, who was at McNeese. He's at ULM. So even Lake Charles is being heavily recruited by competition. So I think it's going to be like a transition year for Frank. It's going to be tough. He needs a year to get the talent back.
Yep.
We're going to take a break.
We'll be right back on the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Make sure to check out our website at lafootballmagazine.com for all the latest recruiting information statewide. This week, check out all of our recruiting interviews with all the latest prospects and coaches. Also, make sure to check out our website to stay up to date with our TV show each week. That website again is lafootballmagazine.com. It's time for the coaching carousel.
Yeah, this is ongoing, Jace, every year. This is my, since 91 to see.
The carousel never stops.
Gosh. It just goes deeper now. It goes into almost spring. And it's really hard for colleges to lose a coach. Even if you hire a coach, spring starts in 2 or 3 weeks for some colleges. That means you have a week to hire assistants. And you're not even prepared to go into spring. You don't even have your playbook and your design and what you're going to do. And your players are waiting on you.
You got to introduce yourself to the players so they know who you are.
So you're behind, right? Ed Orgeron said he was behind because of all the national championship stuff, the White House and all that. And that's true. You lose some of that time in recruiting.
There's some pros and cons
right.
to it.
You get the trophies, right? But you got to go get them, and you miss time to recruit,
you're behind.
Right?
Yep.
You go to this trophy, you go to that award, this award, and it's all, and obviously that's a great thing. But when you're hiring a coach in late February, in the 90s and early 2000s, you never had a coach leave in February. Now it's kind of the norm.
Right.
You're going to have coaches leave in March, which is really bad.
And that's another con with your team winning because all your assistant coaches, everybody's going to want them. They want a piece of the action.
Well, the NFL coaches are still stealing coaches. NFL, they don't care. They're just going to hire who they need when they need them. So they still fire people. And now you got the XFL that gives opportunities. And they pay well. So they could steal coaches, especially like your young grad assistants, your young analysts. You can go make $80,000 in the XFL right now.
You could. They're making much better money than the AAF was when they first started.
So it's revolving doors, and we want to talk about, first I'm going to talk about Mel Tucker. I have a little story, Jace, about Mel Tucker.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever told you this.
I don't think so.
So the Saints win the Super Bowl. It's been a long time.
10 years, 10-year anniversary just a couple weeks
and
ago.
I remember the day because I remember I was up till 2 a.m. celebrating the Saints Super Bowl. I actually drove to New Orleans and took in the celebration.
Went down Bourbon Street?
I don't know where I went, but I took in the celebration with family. We were just all pumped. And I remember I had a meeting. That was Les Miles. So we're going to go another few years.
Okay.
I'll tell a Les Miles story another day.
Okay.
But this was the year that Nick Saban was hired.
At Alabama? Or?
LSU.
Oh, okay. That's
And
going back.
You know, I've got a 7 a.m. meeting with Nick Saban. He's just hired. He calls me on a cell phone, and you know when you get cell phone calls now, you don't know if they're scam numbers or not. And
Yeah, you don't know what the
so
caller ID
I
is.
picked up, and it was a Sunday about 10 at night. And nobody really knew who Nick Saban really was, you know, like Michigan State, you kind of knew. But,
Yeah, Michigan's maybe with the Browns. You would have known.
But it's like, Nick Saban.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you did the recruiting. This was before analysts.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you were doing the recruiting with DiNardo. I was told to call you. Need to meet you 7 a.m. Like, be there. Don't be late. Tunk.
Yep.
Click.
That's not surprising.
So, you know, the football office, this is the old building. This is before the Ponderosa coaches fancy office. This is the one by the stadium, right?
Yep.
To get in, there's parking. You need a card. So, you know, sometimes it's hard to get a little spot when the kids are in session.
Oh, yeah.
You can't get in the building until 9 o'clock. I get out of my car, and I remember Saban getting out of his car. I just knew it was the coach, you know, and I just had that feel. And he's walking toward the building, and I'm walking, and a guy in a you could tell it was a coach trying to do an interview. He had a suit on, which happened to be Mel Tucker.
Okay. Yeah, because he was the defensive backs coach at LSU, right?
So Mel is walking with me, and Mel kind of like meet, and we see Saban, and he opens the building. We get in the elevator. Nothing said this whole time, okay? And I say hey to Mel, right? And I didn't know it was Mel at the time.
Right.
And I'm like, you know, nice to meet you. And then we get out the elevator, and it's like, Derek Dooley will be meeting with you. We'll be hiring you to do our recruiting. We're going to buy the list from you.
Okay.
We're going to keep it going, and I'll give you one shot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this ended up being the whole tenure that Saban was there that I worked with him. And I worked with Dooley and Carl Dunbar. But I'll never forget the day that Mel Tucker was doing the interview. He was sweating, man. He was like someone was pouring water on him. I mean, he was so nervous. This was his first
That's one of his first,
He knew
coaching
Nick.
jobs.
He knew Nick at Michigan State, right? He you know, was with Nick at one time, but he was interviewing him. And then that same year, I remember me and my stepdad, Carl Thompson, were going to when Fair Park was called Fair Park High School. Well, I went to go see a guy named Morris Claiborne, who they call Mo Claiborne.
Right.
And he's the quarterback. He's a junior. And this is a Thursday night game, Independence Stadium in Shreveport. We drive home that night. And I'm going scout Mo, and guess who's on the sideline? Mel Tucker.
Okay.
And I'm like, Mel, got the job. You doing good? He's like, yeah, man, who did I look at tonight? I'm like, well, here Morris Claiborne's the guy.
Yeah, he went on to be all right.
Went on to be all right. But, you know, you see Mel Tucker get the job with Michigan State. A lot of people are angry. But, you know, he got a $3 million raise. Who's going to turn down $3 million in a raise? I mean, no one.
I'm not.
No, I mean, I would tell you to go, like, good for you. But he did what he had to do, and he's got Michigan State ties. And Colorado, he did improve Colorado, and they're probably going to hire Eric Bieniemy, who played at Colorado, I would think.
That'd be logical.
He was a great running. He was a great running back for Coach McCartney. When the Buffaloes were great, man.
in the 90s.
They won a national championship. They had Rasheem Salam. They who was a Heisman Trophy winner, the late Rasheem. They had Darian Hagan, who was a great quarterback.
Yep.
They had a lot of great players. Cordell Stewart, yep. But they just Saul Anasi, who was a great quarterback, who had passed away.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of great players. And boy, they stole a lot of Louisiana players during that time. But you know, you just think of your memories being in this, and I just saw Mel when he was a young coach, and people go, well, man, he got that job fast. No, he didn't. He spent years of learning.
Yeah, he's been in business for a long time. He just happens to be a young guy because he's been,
he's one of my favorite coaches, Mel Tucker. And he was a great coach at LSU. He was a young coach, but a great coach. And, Nick Saban.
He had some good years at Georgia just recently.
Yeah, Nick Saban gave him a start. And I'll never forget that morning. By the way, it was like 10 degrees that morning. It was cold. Yeah, it was cold.
Wow.
And Nick, Nick just don't say a lot, but when he said something, he's right to the point, and you respect him.
Yeah, he's very direct. There's no sugarcoating anything.
Yeah, it's like, go to Dooley. Derek's going to take care of you. This is what, and everything you meet with Dooley on, I'm going to know about. Everything. Yep. And this went on for how long was he there? 4 years, 5 years? So it was the whole time.
He was there in 2000, and then 2004 was his last year. So
the whole time, man, I'm proud of that. Proud I was working with him, back then. Worked with a little bit with Les Miles. So I'm happy for Mel Tucker. I think Michigan State got a great recruiter. He knows the landscape. Mel was at Michigan State prior to that, and I think he's going to do a better job. I thought Mark did a great job with the program.
He did a really good job with the program.
But I think Mel's a young guy that's just got a lot of energy, and he's going to just really kill it in recruiting.
Yeah, I think it was the right time because of looking at the last 2 years, you kind of saw it. But I think, like you said, Mel Tucker's going to do a good job just building the enthusiasm back.
Look, the Spartans were in the playoffs, 3 years ago? To Bama, they lost.
It was like one of the first years of the playoff, and like the second year of the playoff.
I mean, they were in there. Coach DeNarth beat Michigan 4 of the last 8 times. I mean, he had Michigan's number.
He sure has.
He's that program's a sleeping giant. Let's just say that.
Yep.
They're a giant sleep. They could be a Wisconsin.
Well, they said they proved just a couple of years ago when they made the playoff that they can do it. So.
Yeah, I mean they've got tradition. Tons of tradition they just don't have the national championships to back it.
Right. And you got to compete with Michigan, of course, with recruiting and
let's talk about the hire LSU made, Scott Linehan, who goes back to Idaho, and he coached Doug Nussmeier, who ended up playing for the Saints for a couple of years. Doug is now with the Dallas Cowboys.
Ironic.
Scott was with the Dallas Cowboys. And Dennis Erickson hired Scott Linehan. And he was at Idaho. And I talked to a friend of mine the other day, Johnny Nago, who coached at in Southland Conference football. He was at McNeese and Northwestern. They played in Idaho. And that was a spread. They were spreading them out back when nobody was doing it. So Scott's not coming in to be the offense coordinator. Steve Ensminger is the offense coordinator.
Yeah, let's get that straight for a lot of people.
Our fans are kind of they're getting a former head coach of the NFL. Think about this. He was the head football coach in the NFL for the Los Angeles Rams 2 years. His offenses were unbelievable at Dallas up until last year. And Minnesota, he did a great job, right? Detroit, he's the guy.
They were good on
with Stafford.
Yeah, with Stafford when he first got in the league.
And he's been hired to do the red zone.
And third down.
Great hire. Him and Steve are going to be – and look, Brady had very little NFL experience.
Look what he did.
And you just hired a guy with 20 years of NFL experience.
And I think Ed said earlier, it's just to add on. We already have this offense. What can we do better? What can we add?
I think the one thing that people are worried about, and I think it's a good case, is the receivers. Are they going to still catch the ball? Because Joe – was hands-on with the wideouts to help Mickey.
Right.
Will Mickey Joseph take that information he learned from Joe, and will Scott be as hands-on with the receivers? Because the receivers did not drop a lot of balls. I don't think Moss dropped the pass all year. I think that was stated on the internet.
Yep.
Which is phenomenal.
What was it 5,000 catches or something over the summer the receivers have to catch.
Right. And you would assume that LSU would keep whatever Joe brought in and continue that with Mickey Joseph and then Scott.
Right, and just add on it. That's all you can do.
Keep the recipe, right?
Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Scott is who would ever thought you could hire a former NFL head coach who was just an offense coordinator for Dallas as basically your quarterback coach? It's incredible.
LSU is rolling right now.
It's incredible. The next best thing was to be able to hire Doug Nussmeier. But who's to say Doug Nussmeier knows more than Scott, who taught him?
Yeah.
By the way, Doug Nussmeier's son's a 221
LSU,
quarterback
right.
in Texas.
Yep.
Not a bad little, with the Linehan.
There. Yeah.
Now, Linehan has to stay another year to probably get Doug's son to sign.
Right.
He can't leave after this coming year.
Yeah, but liking the LSU quarterback connection so far, like Nussmeier's son, and he's committed to LSU, I believe.
No, not
committed, but he's an LSU target.
Yeah.
And Max Johnson, who they just got, his dad,
Brad
Johnson, won a Super Bowl with the Buccaneers.
Yeah, with Booger McFarland. That was a great team, and I think the LSU fans are nervous. They're always going to be nervous. That's why they're great fans. They worry about everything. I get that. We talk about it over lunch every day, the Louisiana Colleges, all my friends. So, but I really think that's really the main worry is the receivers catching the ball, the small things that Joe did. But Steve Ensminger, at the end of the day, was the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I think they said something like he called 80% of the plays all last year.
Yeah.
So.
I just think him and Joe worked as a team. And then Scott Linehan is going to work as a team with Steve. It's going to be the same thing. And you got a guy that's, got 40 years of coaching experience?
Mm-hmm. Now, here's my question. Were you surprised, when the first report came out that he was going to be the passing game coordinator? Was that the first name that came in your mind, or were you kind of surprised with the initial reaction with it?
I didn't have a name because there's not that many of them out there. Who are you going to hire with the XFL hiring all these other guys? Think about it.
Yeah, the XFL like Hal Mummy.
if you're like a walking encyclopedia 60-year-old coach or maybe a 40-year-old coach, and you got all this great wisdom, you're in the XFL right now. If you're out of work, right?
Right, like Jerry Glanville's coaching.
Right. You can't pick those guys up.
Mm-mm.
Because they're trying to get back to the NFL, because if they do great in XFL, bam, they're back to making big money. Just kind of like an analyst at LSU or any college. But I didn't have a name because it's hard to sign a quarterback coach that has this resume. I applaud Ed for this.
Yeah. He said he's going to take his time with it, and then it showed. And
then all the young guys like Joe Brady, where are they? XFL. All the good, great minds. The XFL picked them all up because, again, if you're on one of these XFL teams, whether you like it, the league or not, and I'm going to be honest, I'll watch one game so far.
I've actually watched all four.
It's good.
It's pretty entertaining.
It's quality football.
Yeah. Better than I thought it was going to be.
Because the NFL's behind it. But the announcers are better. I think announcers make the game. Mm-hmm. It feels like an NFL announced game, too.
Right. And the kickoff rule, I think that's going to be key as well.
But even if this league folds, a lot of these guys are going to make the NFL, make some teams.
And the NFL could take a lot of stuff from
a lot
the
of
XFL.
Coaches from this league. Look, referees from this league. Everybody in this league makes the NFL better. Look at what the USFL did when it folded. All those guys end up going back to the NFL, like Herschel Walker, Jim Kelly, Bobby Hebert.
Steve Young.
They all end up going back to the NFL, and all those coaches got experience in the USFL. And NFL Europe was a great background. Like Mickey Guidry, I remember talking to LSU's former quarterback from Archbishop Shaw.
Yep.
He was able to extend his pro career, but he was talking about all the coaches in that league that are now in the NFL coaching. If it wasn't for NFL Europe, that it wouldn't give a training ground for these guys. But I think it's an A-plus hire, Jace. And now, is Scott Linehan going to be at fault if they lose a game? I don't think he should ever get any of the blame. He's just a quarterback's coach, okay? So
And the only difficult part about this is you're not going to duplicate what you did last year. So, the numbers are just a little bit off. I mean, it's expected.
I'm going to go ahead and throw this out. Joe Burrow will never be replaced. Let's just, lock it up.
Let's just throw that out the window.
All right. Let's look at Joe Burrow to LSU like Tebow was to Florida and Danny Werfel. If you go to Gainesville today, people talk about Danny Werfel.
They're gods over there.
And Tim Tebow. But you got to move on. Because if you don't, you're going to be Florida.
Yeah, they're still trying to replace Tim Tebow after the last
right? So,
decade.
you got to move on. John Elway hasn't been at Stanford in 35 years, so you got to move on if you're Stanford. But
they had Andrew Luck up until the end, yeah.
But you're never going to have another Joe. Now, you might have another great quarterback. Mm-hmm. But to have this 15-0 magical season where you're never trailing but maybe 2 games by maybe a quarter.
Yep.
Clemson and Florida, only a quarter trailed. I've never seen that in my life.
And which is great because they had the 150th year of college football. In the 150 years, we haven't seen anything like what happened last year. No. So,
I mean, it's just a special, and as time goes on, it's going to be more special. When Joe comes back to LSU and it's like 5 years from now, they start awarding him with stuff. I would think maybe in 5 to 10 years there'll be some kind of statue.
There has to be a statue in a couple of years.
Might be 2. You never know. It's kind of early, but maybe so.
Yeah, I would think so.
But Miles Brennan, we'll see what he has in spring. Let's just go ahead and throw it out.
He's got the talent in this offense.
But if you know football, it's not about throwing touchdowns in the spring game on TV. I'm talking about just spring period. It's his team. And I think the LSU coaches are going to know what they have once spring is over. And what's fair to LSU and what's fair to Miles is let's be positive about it and just see what happens. And we really won't know till spring. Now, look, the coaches are going to know after spring, is this our guy still?
Because if they're going for a quarterback at the end of spring, you're going to know.
Well, but what I like with Ed is he's keeping the positive approach that this is our guy. Miles never transferred, which you could have.
He stuck the
stuck
course.
with it.
Yep.
But it's his team. And, what you see on TV in the spring game, that's for the fans. Before the spring game is when you know he's the guy or not, like in practice every day.
The only thing that matters is the locker room. Does the team believe him? That's the only thing.
And so far, I've talked to Ty Davis at Southern Lab running back. I saw him the other day at Southern Lab, and Cordell Thomas, Damon Clark.
Right.
They love him.
Yeah.
And that's good. When your team, like you said, when your team loves you.
That's the only thing that matters.
That's half of it.
Right.
And even the parents of the kids that are coming back, a lot of the parents that I talk to, they think he can do it. And they know what they say? He's going to be Miles Brennan.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be Joe Burrow. It just needs to be Miles Brennan.
If he throws for 3,500 yards and just 40 touchdowns.
That's impressive.
Great year. So it won't be maybe 60 touchdowns and almost 6,000 yards. You won't see that again at LSU.
No, maybe even never. Maybe.
I think that's a record that might stand forever in SEC because everybody goes pro after the junior year, and you'll never see a guy do that in 3 years. Usually, now it's 2 years you get to start in SEC as a quarterback. Yep. But to throw for that, I mean, they might throw for 10,000 yards in 3 years, but to throw for 8,000 yards in 2 years and to do almost 6,000 yards. I mean, David Klingler did like almost 5,000 1 year in
when
Houston.
They had those Houston quarterbacks.
But they were like 5 and 6. They were a horrible team, and all they did was throw it like 80 times a game. They had Andre Ware. But they were not a good team. They threw it so much that they had no defense. It's a whole different setup. SEC is the toughest conference in the United States on defense. He shredded Georgia, Florida, Mississippi State. Ole Miss is better than what people think. Beat Georgia and Atlanta, beat Florida at home, Alabama, Auburn, Clemson,
Texas,
Oklahoma, Texas on the road. I mean, all had good defense. Actually, Texas's strength was Texas's defense until they had injuries. And everybody was bragging about Clemson's defense. And look, what's really so crazy about the media and fans, before LSU played Oklahoma was only giving up like 24 points a game. LSU shredded Oklahoma. You know what people say after the game? Oklahoma was horrible. But prior to that, they were pretty good.
Yeah, this is having. I mean, that's the LSU football team. It's probably the best in college football history. So.
Yeah. So anyway, Scott Linehan's a great hire. Kudos to Ed Orgeron.
Yeah, not only on Linehan, but Pelini as well. Ed
Pelini,
has done a great job.
Pelini's an A+++. This man knows the SEC too, and he's been in Baton Rouge. It's not like he's like trying to get acquainted to Baton Rouge. He knows Baton Rouge.
Yeah, but that was going to be the main question for Ed. Can he keep on getting these great big-time hires as assistant coaches? And so far, he's doing it.
So all they need now is a graduate transfer center, a great graduate transfer linebacker for depth.
Yep.
And they don't even maybe need to use the third one. It could carry over to the 221 class. And if Miles Brennan tears it up in spring, then obviously they don't need to take a graduate transfer quarterback.
Nope.
So that was our coaching changes, the coaching carousel. So
yeah, coaching carousel.
Every week.
We'll be right back on the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen. Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brecheen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
It's time for the high school team of the week.
Yeah, Jace, we've got a great coach from Grace King High School. And, Jace, you've talked to Coach before. Mention Coach's name and a little bit. You've dealt – Coach has been really good.
Yeah, with the questionnaires, and he's been really helpful. We do this every year before we release the magazine. And Coach Chadwick Lewis, he's one of the best guys out there in the business, and we really appreciate his time talking with us today. Yeah,
Coach, I wanted to put Grace King on the map outside of New Orleans, man, because I've actually been to some games over the years. And, you know, most of the recruiters, as you know, they only go to a lot of the same schools, it seems, you know, and you know, maybe you don't get some of those big-name college coaches all the time at your games, and this is the opportunity to brag on your school. And tell everybody a little bit about you, Coach, and prior to your coaching, some of the schools that you've been at and where you went to high school prior to Grace King.
Okay. Thank you for having me on. I'm originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. Graduated in 2002 from Byrd High School. Went on to Louisiana Tech and majored in finance. I wasn't trying to teach, but I wanted to coach. And then I said, well, you know, the best thing for me to do is teach math if I'm a finance major. And got certified to teach math and started coaching. I did a couple of years in middle school. Then in 2009 was hired at Byrd to be on the freshman staff. After 2 years, became a head freshman coach. Then in 2011 or 2012, moved up to the varsity wide receivers. Coached there for 2 more years at the wide receivers. Actually was able to go to the state championship game in Division I. Lost to Rummel. Still breaks my heart. In 2013, we lost to Rummel by 1 point in that year. From there, I was hired as the offensive coordinator at Huntington High School, also in Shreveport. Stayed there for about 3 years. Was a rebuilding program at that time too. You know, just trying to change the culture in that, you know, school, trying to get them to that next level again. Then I was hired as the offensive coordinator in Port Allen in 2017. Again, you know, trying to change the culture, rebuilding that program as well. We was able to make the playoff both years there, though. Almost beat the number 4 team in the state in 2A in 2017 18. So, we had some pretty good success at Port Allen. Then applied and was hired here at Grace King in March of last year. And, trying to change the culture, change the mindset of, what is athletics and football at Grace King.
And Coach, look, I've been to North Louisiana many times, Shreveport, Bossier, and Natchitoches. And how you like South Louisiana?
I like South Louisiana. I don't want to go back to North Louisiana unless, it's just imperative that I go back.
Right. Family, friends.
I want to try to, let something, hopefully not, but let something happen. Hopefully I can kind of stay down here in South Louisiana. Hopefully try to stay at Grace King as long as I can as well.
Coach,
bring some respect to this program and get it to that next level.
Coach, my experience going to Grace King, a lot of good students. Discipline is big time in the school, and it's very interesting. Talk about the enrollment and the type of kids you have at the school. It's a very diverse school.
Yes, we are a 5A school, about 1,300 kids, but our population is probably about 55-60% Hispanic. We have some kids from the Middle East. We have kids from Asia. It's a truly a big melting pot here.
Everywhere.
But I have been able to embrace the cultures, the many different cultures here. Because a lot of the kids that we have, especially the Hispanic population, they don't know a lot about football, American football.
Right.
Football to them is soccer.
Right.
But I've been able to get about 5 or 6, kids to say, let me give this football a shot, and they love it, and they want to keep playing for me. So my goal is to try to keep getting those kids to learn the culture of what American football is about.
Well, do you have a good kicker coming up since soccer's
we
really?
We do. Matter of fact, both of my kickers, my punter and my place kicker, are both soccer kids. My wide receiver coach actually is the head girls soccer coach. And so when I came on staff, I hired him, and he was able to recruit two of the soccer kids. And they have been doing very well for us. Matter of fact, our soccer team goes to the playoffs today. Play a first round game.
All right.
So, so we got a little success. Basketball is having some success this year. So, my thing is football. I want to build on the success that those two sports have had.
And Coach, I want to brag a little bit about you because it's really hard to find coaches who can teach English and math in high school, especially like algebra, geometry, and you teach these hard subjects, Coach.
Yeah, I have taught from 6th grade all the way up to algebra 3. So I'm pretty good at the math. And I love math. Kids got to be able to add and subtract, multiply, divide, all of that. So, I try to make sure that my football players understand, hey, this is, I'm a core teacher. So because I'm a core teacher, I got to take this stuff seriously. And you got to take it seriously. You want to sign those big time letters or those contracts when you make it to the pros. I want you to be able to add your money.
Right.
So.
Coach, Chadwick, talk about, do you have any kids that could go D3, D2, even though signing day's already passed? Anybody that could potentially sign late that you want to brag about if the coaches are listening?
I have a few kids, actually. A couple kids, Deion Batiste, a little slot receiver, very quick, electric. He's a kid that I know can play some D2, D3 ball. Play quarterback for me, but he's probably more of an athlete, wide receiver, DB guy. Kevon Winston. He's also a kid that I know can play at the next level. Had some late bloomers, Armand Lee and Derek Green. Couple tall kids, lanky kids, but good speed on them. They also, all these kids run track for me as well. That's one of the big things I'm trying to make these kids do is get on the track program and get faster. But these are some kids that I believe that can play at the next level. This year, got a lot of kids coming up that I believe will play a little bit bigger. at the D2 and D1 levels in the future. So, I mean, even though we're a great team, we hadn't had a lot of success over the years. We got some kids here that can play, and they love the opportunity to play at that next level. And I can tell them I'm gonna do all I can to help.
Well, Coach, keep grinding in the classroom and also on the field. I know you're working hard, and I'm glad that we could promote Grace King High School today in New Orleans. And good luck to you 219 on, man. It was good to have you, and people got to know who you are, because
I appreciate it.
You've been grinding and coaching ball a long time.
This is year 13, and every year I've had enjoyed success. Maybe not necessarily in the wins, but just grooming young men to go to that next level. Because many of we want to go to college and play ball. I also want many young men to be productive citizens, and I can say that a lot of my young men that played under me over the years have done that.
Well, thank you, Coach. Chadwick Lewis, head coach at Grace King High School. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back on the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Make sure to tune in this week to Louisiana Football TV Magazine as host Lee Brecheen brings on big-time guests, recruits, coaches, you name it. You can catch the show on YourView, Channel 4 in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Lafayette, CW21 in Shreveport-Bossier City area, CBS in Lake Charles, ETEL in Ascension, and ETEL Vision in Houma, Lafourche. Check your area for local listings. It's time for the hot topic of the week.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about the NFL and college players, basically natives, where the states supply the NFL, and then colleges. It's really twofold. People follow recruiting. I've been in recruiting since 1991. Started the magazine, Louisiana Football Magazine, in 96. And, everybody likes to brag about who produces the most NFL talent. It's not just about the NFL. To me, it's about college signees and NFL. You can't judge a high school based on how many players, I don't think, just to go to the NFL, because high schools aren't set up for NFL teams. But I think you also look at it as how many do they produce to colleges. To me, that's more important. Very few go pro. Very few go pro. And I'm going to give you an idea. The census right now, if you go on the internet, Jace pulled these up, and this is current to this show. Florida has the best ratio of 1 out of 4,095 kids go to the NFL. 1 out of 4,095 are from Florida. They rank number 1 right now for the NFL. The second state is Georgia. 1 out of 4,132 kids from the state of Georgia. And they have 114 players in the NFL right now, Georgia. Florida has 201. South Carolina, 1 out of 4,745 with 51 players. That surprises probably a lot of people, South Carolina. 4 would be Alabama. 1 out of 4,818 kids, 55 players in the NFL. And 5th, our home state of Louisiana, 1 out of 5,017, which has 60 players in the NFL. Now, here's the other thing. Here's the two sides of this. From the college end, we don't have the census, but just looking at college football, the last 20 years. Let's just go 20 years. And I wrote these down and did these notes myself and follow it. We just gave you the NFL top states for producing players currently by census population. Florida 1, Georgia 2, South Carolina 3, Alabama 4, Louisiana 5. Now, from a college standpoint, if you look at the population of Louisiana,
like per capita.
Per capita. Yeah. Louisiana is not a state of 10 million or 8 million. I mean, we're talking 5, 6 million people, okay? Louisiana is one of the top 5 states for producing college football players. Now think about that. The big three, the population states is Florida, Texas, California.
Yep.
These are 20+ million people in each state, okay? And LSU, has the luxury of recruiting a state like Louisiana that's always going to be a national top 5. I mean, you don't have to go anywhere and maybe get a Burrow, franchise left tackle, recruit
Texas and Mississippi and
linebacker or something like that. But receivers and DBs, I will always say this until my last breath of talking: you do not have to go outside Louisiana to sign a wide receiver and defensive back.
Or even running backs. Louisiana produced a lot over the last couple of years.
It's the linemen. Louisiana doesn't always have the franchise O&D lineman, and maybe not always the quarterback. But you're right, Jace, running back, it's Louisiana's one of the all. I would love to go. I'm going to probably do a census on that, but it's probably in the top 10 in the country.
Absolutely.
But for college football players, Louisiana is in the top 5, not pro, but top 5. They're also in the, like I said,
they're also in the top 5 in the NFL consensus.
For the NFL, right. But South Carolina's 3, which is crazy.
Yeah, they have some good players. I know Jadeveon Clowney's the first name that pops out, but they've had a couple of players that go in the NFL.
Well, a lot of them go to South Carolina, and you don't remember them because it's not Georgia or Clemson. But South Carolina, here's another stat. Even though South Carolina's not been really good the last 3-4 years since
Spurrier,
and then they had Lou Holtz, and they really weren't great. I mean, Spurrier and Holtz had them in bowl games, but they were more like 9-3, 8-4. They had some 10-win seasons, but they never lost a lot of the players in the state. Meaning they signed 80% of the players with South Carolina. With Clemson. They don't leave the state. I mean, it's so hard. LSU tried to get Jordan Birch this year. And South Carolina had a horrible year. Muschamp, if he doesn't win in 220, he's probably gone.
Yeah, he's probably going to get fired after this
And the
year.
kid still signs with South Carolina. Davion Clowney was recruited by Saban himself. Saban never loses players. This is back when Saban won 3 and 4, like back-to-back.
When he was dominant, when the program
And
was
Clowney
dominant.
tells Saban no. Okay? That's how hard it is to get a kid out of South Carolina. LSU has signed one player out of South Carolina that was good, Sam the Sonic Montgomery.
Yeah, he was a great
So they called
player.
him Sonic Sam. He was a DN. Hadn't had a great pro career, but he's still playing in the XFL.
Yeah, he's the XFL.
I mean, he's keeping it going. But he had that 1 year with him and Borcavius Mingo were like bookends.
Yeah, that 2013 season.
But they didn't have the D tackles inside to help them. And I think that hurt their sacks.
2012 season, yeah.
They had no D lineman hardly later in their career. And Sonic went pro, I thought, a little prematurely. He went pro early, and he was never really polished. You never get to catch up, But, he's still playing XFL. He was in the other league that
The AAF.
I mean, he's been all over
Rest
the
in
place.
peace.
Yeah, right. He did play a little bit in the NFL in the practice squads, like you always get 3 years on the practice squads. But, South Carolina, I wouldn't even have thought that South Carolina would be 3 of total players from your state in the NFL, 3, number 3 in the whole U.S. But when I think of college football players, I think of who dominates besides Louisiana. Let's get the big 3 states out, like California, Texas, Florida. We all know they supply a lot of college teams.
Right.
And I've seen that over 35, 40 years. But Ohio, the state of Ohio supplies the whole Big Ten. And it's hard to get a kid out of Ohio if you're in the SEC. Now, Mark
Unless
Ingram.
you're LSU.
Unless you're Nick Saban. Mark
Right.
Ingram was from Michigan, right? So that's
Yep.
a Big Ten guy. And his dad played at Michigan State. Saban still got him.
Yep.
The starting center for Alabama, that's now with the Colts, was from Ohio, was an All-American, went to Alabama. Nick can pull guys from that Big Ten area. LSU's still not quite there. They got one kid from that area.
That's what I was referring to was Burrow.
Well,
Getting from Ohio.
They went into Illinois and got an offensive lineman that's now with the Seattle Seahawks. That was all SEC. The name's escaping me right now, but he's with Seattle. He was a center.
Ethan Posick.
Ethan Posick. So he was an Illinois kid, Chicago kid, right?
He was, yep.
And he was a great player for LSU. And I really wish LSU could get more linemen out of the Ohio, Illinois, PA area, because those are where you get the 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", big, tough guys.
Big Ten country, yep.
They run the ball in high school. They're smash mouth. You get those maulers that they're just tough kids.
I mean, you just look at the Big Ten. I mean, you look at how Wisconsin does it and how, Michigan. I mean, they got big old line, and they like to run the football. That's what they do.
But to me, quality players, my favorites are the state of Ohio, outside of Louisiana, in the state of Georgia. Georgia produces some big-time players. And Rick gets his share. And then Kirby Smart got his share.
Yep.
But Kirby Smart lost 3 big-time players to LSU from Georgia this year. It's not even going to affect him.
Including Eric Gilbert, the tight end.
Right. Well, they signed 2 linebackers from Georgia that were in the top 20 in the state. And the top running back in the state signed with Georgia Tech because Georgia didn't need him. Georgia had 100 big-time D1s this year. I think they had close to 300 D1s signed this year, the state of Georgia.
Yeah, it was a great year for Georgia, recruiting-wise.
But when you look at it, Jace, in the South, outside of Texas, Georgia's the big state. And LSU's really done well in Georgia the last few years, recruiting quality players. I really hope that Ed Orgeron can get more quality linemen out of Georgia because they have big-time linemen too.
Now, they've been doing a pretty good job going out of state and getting some of those linemen, but like you said earlier, I totally agree on as far as like the state of Louisiana itself, you definitely need to lock down and get those skill position players.
Texas has 154 players in the NFL. That's really not a lot considering the population.
How big Texas is.
And they're 11th on the NFL list per census,
I found that
right?
pretty surprising. I thought they would be higher up.
Well, they've got, 30 million people in Texas almost. I mean, it's
you got to put that into factor.
So 1 out of 8,818 players that play college ball from Texas play in the NFL. It's just the population. But again, I love Big Ten country because think about it too. Name all the coaches that came from the Big Ten, like Saban, and all of the guys that coach with Saban. The coach had just resigned with Michigan State.
Yeah, Antonio. Yep.
I mean, he was a product. And
Antonio.
The Hayden Fries, Urban Meyer's from there. I mean, even though he was at Florida and he was at Utah, he's from that area. When you look at all these tough coaches that are from the Ohio area, PA, Illinois, you look at the resumes of a lot of your top coaches today, they're from that area.
Yeah.
LSU.
Bo Pelini's from
Ohio.
Ohio, yep.
How about Stoops? He's from Ohio.
Yep.
Mark Stoops, his brother, from Ohio. He's turning Kentucky around.
Yep.
Who's the new coach? The only guy from that area that didn't do so well in the SEC was Mississippi State's coach that was just fired, Moorhead.
Joe Moorhead, yep.
He's a PA guy.
Yep. But he did develop Saquon Barkley, so that's the thing he's got.
But look at Penn State's coach now. Where was he before? Vanderbilt.
James Franklin.
James turned Vanderbilt around. He's from Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
he's
there's
one of the most underrated coaches.
There's something
out there.
in the water in that Big Ten area. First of all, they're tough.
It's tough football. You look all around the Big Ten. It's just tough, smash mouth football.
And that league gets their skill players from the South, a lot of them. And then when they do produce a great skill player, it's a tough, usually a big receiver, a big DB. But they get all their corners and all their receivers from the South, usually from Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia. Or, so really what's crazy, Texas supplies a lot of Big Ten teams. You see a lot of Texas kids at Ohio State. Urban Meyer started that.
I even saw one from Northwestern. He was a linebacker, Patty Fisher. He's like one of their top recruited guys, and he went to Northwestern. That's like kind of the bomb of the Big Ten. So it shows you what these Texas guys are going to.
Minnesota's building their program back, P.J. Fleck, with Florida kids and Texas kids that no one wants. But he's seeing – I think P.J. Fleck's a great coach because he's taking kids the big guys won't take, and he sees something in them. So he's got a good eye for talent, and he's developing them. That's
a lot of the Big Ten schools are doing. They don't necessarily get the 5-star guys, but they get 3, 4-star guys and develop them into, great players.
And let's face it, if you're a Louisiana school like Tech or Tulane or ULL or LSU, you don't want to play a Big Ten team in a bowl game.
No.
What happens when LSU plays Iowa? It's usually tough.
Back is a tough, hard-fought win. I mean, talent on the field. I mean, LSU will probably have more talent, but just toughness and just 11 guys playing at one time. I mean,
Jamarcus Russell remembers Iowa.
Yep.
Saban's last coach game, Iowa beats LSU, right?
It was like on the Hail Mary or something.
Yeah, but still, I mean, on paper, it shouldn't have been a game. But again, I'm getting back to that conference. When you
it's
see
not going to be easy when you play those teams.
No, Michigan State, even when Nick Saban was the head coach at Michigan State, LSU had to score like 35, 40 points in Independence Bowl to beat Michigan State. They were beating LSU at halftime.
Right.
It's before your time, but
yeah.
But they were doing that. And then you look at Wisconsin. Wisconsin, God, I mean, they're 6-0 every year. They always find a way to lose a game or two because they got to play Ohio State at the end or Penn State.
Yep. But they're always in the mix every year.
I mean, look, LSU played Wisconsin in Texas. I was at the game when they had Leonard Fournette was a freshman. It was tough.
And a lot of LSU fans want to forget the game the next year when they go at Lambeau and Wisconsin pull off the upset and beat LSU.
Now, again, the point is, shouldn't have been a game, but they're tough and they're relentless, and if you make a mistake, you're going to pay for it.
You're going to pay for it, yep.
But good point, Northwestern in the Big Ten. Coach Fitzgerald, to me, is one of the best coaches in the college football game. And the only reason that Coach Fitzgerald, Pat Fitzgerald, is still there is that he played there. His heart is connected to that college.
He was a great player.
That says something, and I really have a lot of respect for that man because he's been offered more money to go to other schools, and what did he do? He's turned down. Who turns down money today?
Not a lot of people. Not a lot of people.
And so, anyway, I know we went off on the Big Ten, but, we wanted people to know, and I know a lot of people follow this, and I think they're interested in it, but South Carolina being 3 on the NFL list for players in the NFL.
That was the most surprising one for me as well.
Georgia, I'm not shocked with 2.
No, I'm not shocked with some of the other
Florida,
ones.
not shocked being 1, right? Population.
Right.
But
not
Alabama.
Louisiana being top 5.
And then Louisiana. And you know what else this correlates to, Jace? Who were the 4 playoff teams this past year?
So you look at the 4 playoff teams: Oklahoma,
Clemson.
LSU.
Where are most of their players from? Georgia.
And South Carolina as well.
And also Ohio State has a lot of Florida kids.
Yep.
And then South Carolina's 3 on the list. A lot of those kids again are Clemson. And then Alabama 4, which they're a playoff team every year. And then it shows you where the talent's coming out.
Yep.
And if you don't get the talent, you don't play for the prizes. You got to have the talent.
What's that phrase, Lee? Numbers never lie. Well, that shows you right there.
No, and then what's shocking is Texas, is 11th.
Yeah, that was
per census per player for the population.
Yeah.
Ohio's 10. That's why I keep talking about Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State will never be down. Michigan will never be. When I say down, they'll never be like a 6-5 program.
Mm-hmm.
To their standards, like 8-4.
Wins.
That's not good. But the talent will never go away in Ohio and PA and Illinois, and that's why it's going to always be Ohio State. It's going to always be Michigan. It's always going to be Clemson.
Yeah, I think Pennsylvania has produced like the most NFL Hall of Famers because of Dan Marino,
Joe
and Tony
Namath,
Dorsett,
Joe
Namath, and those guys. Just look at Pennsylvania.
Bill Fralick,
Yep.
Mark May played on that team, and Green at linebacker. A lot of great. Ricky Jackson played at Pittsburgh. Now he was from Florida though.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want Ricky Jackson beating me up and calling it on the show. But no, Ricky Jackson, the Saints great, was from the state of Florida, which, what's crazy? Pittsburgh was not signing. They signed Hugh Green. Hugh Green and Ricky Jackson started side by side in Pittsburgh. The greatest linebacker tandem in college football that I can ever remember. They were both from Florida. And back in those days, Pittsburgh didn't sign Florida kids, hardly.
Right.
And just this is a little tidbit for the listeners, but that is our hot topic of the week.
We'll be right back on the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.
Make sure to check out our website at lafootballmagazine.com for all the latest recruiting information statewide. This week, check out all of our recruiting interviews with all the latest prospects and coaches. Also, make sure to check out our website to stay up to date with our TV show each week. That website again is lafootballmagazine.com.
It's time for a play-by-play segment.
Back with Lee Brecheen with the Sports Scouting Report. We're really honored today to have a real special guest from all the way from Shreveport, Louisiana. He's the play-by-play. He's the voice of the Byrd high school football team on Friday nights or, Thursday nights. They have Thursday night games in Shreveport and Bossier and Natchitoches. Charlie, thanks for joining us.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, we play plenty of Thursday night ball games. In fact, I think I want to say about 70 to 80% of our schedule next year or next season for 2020 are Thursday ball games. So yeah, we definitely play a lot of Thursday nights here in Shreveport, Bossier.
And I got to say, the Yellow Jackets, the Byrd Yellow Jackets. And I've got to admit, coming up from Baton Rouge, I live in Baton Rouge, but it seems like every game I've been to for Byrd, I've been to 10 games in 10 years, are all Thursday night games. Because I think that's the only night I can get back Friday morning, and then I go to Baton Rouge games on Friday, or New Orleans or Lafayette or Houma. And I enjoy those Thursday night games because sometimes, Charlie, you know this, while you're doing play-by-play for Byrd, there's another game going on probably at Mansfield or Airline. There's usually 2 or 3 in the same night.
Yeah, and the reason, so your listeners understand, the reason is because we don't have that many public stadiums for high school football in Shreveport. Yeah. And for instance, Byrd shares Lee Hedges Stadium, which is in the backside of Captain Shreve High School. Mm-hmm. It shares it with Captain Shreve and sometimes Southwood, sometimes Woodlawn, sometimes both. And so there's usually 3 schools that use Lee Hedges Stadium. Woodlawn and Huntington and sometimes Southwood have used Independence Stadium, and then Green Oaks and Northwood. Green Oaks uses the stadium at Northwood. So that's the reason, one of the reasons for playing so many Thursday night ball games.
Charlie, you've had the opportunity, and I know you love it. You have to love it to do high school football, whether you're a referee or a coach, assistant coach, play-by-play. You've got sideline reporters. We're going to give all those guys credits too before you leave tonight. I know you got some people that help you on Friday night, Thursday nights, but what is your biggest joy of doing a high school football game? I mean, this is 20 plus years for you. I think going into 22 or 23 years for Byrd.
This will be my 2020 will be my 23rd year doing play-by-play, and about 25 overall, because I did some color and stats and sideline reporting and stuff for a couple of years when Dave Nitz was actually doing it, and who's been the longtime voice of Louisiana Tech football for 45 years, for really all of Tech sports for 45 years. And anyway, I was lucky enough that they kept me around. They allowed me to take over the play-by-play, and I've done the history and record books and game notes, and I was fortunate enough a few years ago to also coach baseball at Byrd. And so I've had a wonderful, wonderful relationship with Byrd High School, and people ask me all the time, well, did you go there? Do your kids go there? And the answer to those questions are no. I'm from Lafayette. I'm a graduate of St. Thomas More, and
STM's in the house.
And then and my children, where we live in South Bossier City, across the river. And my kids, my oldest went to Parkway. I've got a junior at Parkway, and then my youngest, Camille, is going to be will be in middle school next year. So no, I just happen to have a great relationship with the folks, and Miss Lynn Fitzgerald at the time, and Coach Mike Suggs, and the Booster Club president Archer Frierson, and those people, Suggs and Frierson and Lynn Fitzgerald retired and moved away, but they were gracious enough to give me the duties and welcome me into the city of Byrd, and I've enjoyed it because it is the purest form of football. That the majority of those young men that are out there on Thursday or Friday nights are representing their schools, their families, their friends, themselves, and playing for the sheer pride in that factor as well as the love of the game, because the majority of them, once that final gun is sounded at the end of their senior season, they'll never put football pads on again.
Right, it's over.
And it's just the joy, the school. Coach, Miss Fitzgerald told me a long time ago. I interviewed her a number of times over her years at Byrd, and it was about how it's such a trickle-down effect that when, the Byrd has a successful athletic program, particularly a season in football, that school spirit is raised. The kids are eager to be a part of it. There are less discipline problems at school. The teachers are more excited because the kids are eager. And so it's just a trickle-down effect. And it's, like I said, I just love high school football. And not that I don't love, college football and the NFL and other levels, but this is the purest form. And, these guys aren't playing to get to to make millions of dollars. Yeah. Most of them, like I said, this is the last time that they'll ever put on pads.
And we have Charlie Cavell, the voice of the Byrd Yellow Jackets football team, on Friday, Thursday nights with us. Charlie, being from Baton Rouge, I've always been more of a historian. I've loved the whole state of Louisiana. I've always embraced, I guess, why starting Louisiana Football Magazine in '96 was so, a big deal to me. And I know it's a big deal to Louisiana with the whole state. But, growing up, I remember watching David Woodley, a former Yellow Jacket. The late David Woodley went to the Miami Dolphins in a Super Bowl, as you know, LSU. Terry Bradshaw was my idol growing up, Woodlawn in Shreveport, as you know. Wendell Davis, what a great receiver at LSU and in the NFL. Byrd, and Bo Harris at Captain Shreve. Roland Harper with the Bears from Captain Shreve. Stan Humphreys. People don't really mention Stan a lot at Southwood. They forget he went to Southwood High School and went to a Super Bowl with the Chargers.
ULM.
Yeah,
NLU back then.
Yeah, NLU Northeast, and Bubby Brister and all those guys, and Peterson. And then you have Arnez Battle, that was a great player at Notre Dame, was a quarterback, as you know, at Byrd. We're going to talk about some baseball guys too. But who were some of your favorite players to come out of Byrd? Not so much from a talent standpoint, but just covering them. Doing play-by-play. Who were some of your favorites over the years?
I think you have to start with Arnaz Battle. Arguably Arnaz can even, they've been playing football, Yellow Jackets football, since 1905. And I've gone back and done the history of Yellow Jacket football. And the reason I say Yellow Jackets and not Byrd is because it was Shreveport High School up until 1925, and they played that 25 season still as Shreveport High School, but they were still purple and gold, still the Yellow Jackets. They changed the name of the school in honor of Clifton Ellis Byrd, who was the first superintendent of Caddo Parish Schools, et cetera, et cetera. So the history of the school dates back to of the program dates back to 1905. And if you look back, they've had great players, particularly in the early part of the 20th century when, they were the only public high school in Caddo Parish.
Right.
Until Fair Park came along a couple of years after Byrd was there was a bond issue like in 1920, 24 or 25, somewhere around there, that called for the building of 2 new high schools. Well, they built the new Shreveport High School and then changed it to Byrd, where it is currently on Line Avenue. And then the other was Fair Park in like 1927, 28, out at right by Independence Stadium. Unfortunately, Fair Park closed down a few years ago, and they sent those kids to BTW. But I'm getting off track.
Right. That's
but
all
anyway, right. Arnaz Battle, I think, is arguably the greatest high school football player in Byrd history. I mean, he's certainly in the top 5. I mean, when you consider the 3 years that the 4 years that he played, 3 as a preeminent starter, what Arnaz did, he was just one of those guys that single-handedly could dominate a football game, and often did.
He was the Leonard Fournette of Byrd High School, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but he had his hands on the football every time because he was behind center. He was a quarterback. Right. Eventually played wide receiver at Notre Dame and in the NFL for 10-plus years. But, I mean, you know, Arnaz is at the top of most every statistical and scoring category in school history. And he is, I think, you know, definitely in the 25 years I've been doing Byrd football, he is the best player, that all-around player that I've seen come out of Byrd High School. You know, we talked about David Woodley. David actually served as my color commentator for a couple of seasons until his untimely death a while back. And then one of my favorite guys and favorite LSU Tigers and a guy that I'm lucky enough to call a good friend, Lifford Hobley.
Yeah, great
Lifford
player.
Hobley came out of Byrd, and he was a quarterback and a cornerback and a safety. And Lifford, you know, was one of those guys that kind of did it all. But you know, there were certainly guys in the earlier 20th century that to come out of Byrd, because it was such a big school in the sense that it was the only public high school for years in Caddo Parish, that, you know, in the early part of the century there were great names that, you know, nobody, very few people would remember. But I mean, you had a guy like Bo Campbell. Bo Campbell was a sensational player, went down and played at LSU. Dr. Billy Bundrick. I don't know if you remember
Louisiana Tech.
Dr.
Louisiana Tech. Yeah.
Right. Well, Dr. Bundrick was an all-stater at Byrd for 2 years, both in football and in baseball, and played at Louisiana Tech. You know, back particularly in the, I would say, the 50s and 60s, Byrd was a really, really, really good football team and really great players. A guy that you may not know that is a Byrd graduate and just a couple of years ago got inducted into the Byrd Letterman's Hall of Fame is Dr. Sam Nader.
Yeah, I do. You know, I was going to bring that up, Charlie, and because Sam, I found out 2 years ago, and I've known Sam for 40 years, since I was like 8 or 9 years old. I met him at LSU, and he never really said Byrd or where he went to high school, and they never put it in his bio. They put, you know, went to Auburn and, you know, coached at LSU, was a JV coach. But I was going to ask you that, actually. You beat me to it, but that was something that I just found out in the last 2 years, and a great guy. Unbelievable guy.
Yeah, and part of the reason for that, Lee, is because he started, his parents moved around, and he ended up, I want to say he was down at in Lake Charles.
Yes.
And then they got transferred up here and moved up to Shreveport, and he came to Byrd and led the Jackets to the 1962 state championship game. Unfortunately, they lost, but they were the runners-up. So, but he had a fantastic season. You know, some other guys whose names that you might recognize would be the late Chris Beard.
Yes.
You know, Chris Beard was a 1992-93 MVP in the district, and unfortunately, Chris was paralyzed in a an accident, and then unfortunately a real tragic situation. He ended up passing away. But there guys like that. I mean, there's been plenty of others, and I mean, when you have 115 years of football, and
then Chris, I want to mention Chris Byrd went to LSU too. Another player, and some other Shreveport players or Bossier players. We're talking now. We're getting closer to now. I was throwing out the older ones, and you were too. But you look at all the Evangel players that came out in the Calvary Baptist. Shea Patterson, going to Ole Miss and in Michigan at Calvary Baptist. Jerry Tillery going to Notre Dame. He's in the NFL. You look at Josh Booty going to LSU, the major leagues. John David Booty going to USC. Abram Booty going to LSU. And then the other two Booty brothers were quarterbacks. And just on and on and on. In Calvary Baptist, Grady Williams going to LSU. But the explosion of Calvary Baptist Evangel the last 15 years, and then it looks like to me, tell me if I'm wrong, Charlie, but it looks like Airline's getting stronger now. Looks like Benton is getting stronger, Houghton. It looks like North DeSoto. All those schools are starting to get really strong teams.
Well, Airline had a really good year this year, and thankfully so. Bo Meeks, their head coach, has been battling cancer, and unfortunately he came back and he recently had surgery again. But they had a really good year, and they had a veteran squad and had just a fine year. Houghton, Coach Jason Brotherton's been one of the most wonderful people to work with as far as opposing coaches that I've had. I love the folks over in Houghton. I enjoy just going, sit down and chat with them, and they're just fine people in that whole community, like many schools and many places in Louisiana that community rallies around the Houghton Buccaneers. And this year they had a outstanding group of players, and C.J. Williams, who's headed to Louisiana Tech, and many others. Matthew Witten, their tight end, who I really thought should have gone to
great player. I like Witten.
And clutch, and he's that hybrid. Has the size of a tight
kid,
end,
tough,
but
could remove.
Yeah, but the speed and route running and hands of a wide receiver, and it seemingly every time there was a clutch play that needed to be made, it was. They were looking for 14. They were looking for Witten.
And their defensive end, Chappell's a good player, too. I thought was very underrated this past year.
And then you had the St. Andre kid who his dad
Jack
coached. Yeah. And they also had Brian Feaster on defense who came from Airline. They were very, very good defensively as well. And but they've had a lot of good players this year. This was kind of the year that they were pointing to, because they had all of these guys coming back, and they had a fine season, and they've gotten stronger. For Benton and Coach Reynolds Moore, another guy that I enjoy working with. I know Reynolds rubs some people the wrong way because of his interactions with referees and that, but Reynolds and I have always had a really
Ole
fine
Miss guy.
relationship.
Ole Miss guy.
Yeah, he is a rebel. I tease him all the time about, it's just karma that you're coaching at a high school who is the Tigers with purple and gold. And Benton, they made the playoffs this year, which that's a lot to be said. I know in this day and age with select, non-select, everybody kind of makes the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But for them to make the playoffs in their first year in 5A, competing in this district,
that's a feat.
Was a very positive something for them to build on, because usually when a team moves from 4A to 5A, it's going to take them a couple of years to just understand that, the physical nature of the games, that there's no weekend off. There's no
winnable games in 5A in district. There's 7 really tough games.
Yeah. The only one you really could point at that was you looked at the schedule and say, well, this is a game that we should win has been Southwood, unfortunately, for the last few years, and it's not like the last few years. Southwood has had a lot of talent on their team.
Good talent.
But they just haven't been able to put it together now. They're still they're without a head coach, and there's been some rumors about who will be the next head coach, but so it'll be a different Southwood Cowboys team coming in 2020.
Yeah, you can't sleep on Southwood or Huntington. Those two teams are always got talent, as you know. Even Kenny Davidson, we got to throw that name out from Huntington.
Yeah, well, I mean,
way back.
Look at Green Oaks. I mean, Green Oaks, the school
Davis
that
White.
they are, and the talent that they've produced. I mean,
incredible.
Absolutely incredible. And
Rovero Swan, how about that name? Rovero Swan.
There you go. Well, and former Southern head coach. Do you remember?
Used to wear the hard hat. To games.
Well, he wore the little floppy hat, he coached over there. I mean, just anyway, Gerald Kimball. Was it Gerald Kimball?
Yeah, Gerald Kimball. Yeah.
And well, anyway, so I mean, yes, Shreveport and Bossier has produced a lot of talent for a lot of places, and then I had this conversation with former Houghton head coach and Rodney Guin, who's now been at Calvary Baptist for a while. Many years ago, we had this conversation about, Byrd doesn't produce the Marlon Seats or the Dak Prescotts, guys that are big time players that, make it to the NFL very often. I mean, really in the last 25 years, we've had Ornaz Battle, Jonathan Stewart, and Kyron Williams play at Power 5 conference schools. So, this misnomer and misperception that, Byrd can get anybody they want because it's a magnet school. Well, that's just not true.
Well, look, let me ask you this, Charlie, because this is what, going down the same road and path, this has been on my mind for a long time. Do you agree or disagree that people sometimes put too much of an emphasis on how many kids from a high school go to the NFL rather than the success of the kids at the high school?
Yes. Yeah. And I agree with that. I also agree with what Rodney was pointing to is that, you may not have those super stud athletes that are going to, go to the NFL. But what Byrd generally what generally has under Mike Suggs in his 22 years as a head coach and 30 at the school has been 22 pretty good football players.
Yeah.
And we do what we do. People always say, y'all run that old antiquated triple option offense. Well, we do because it gives us the best opportunity to win football games. And at the end of the day, that's what you're there for. We don't have – our biggest offensive lineman this year was Trey Lester, who signed with Arkansas Pine Bluff. And Trey is kind of the anomaly. Trey's, a 6'2", 6'3", 275-pound offensive lineman. Well, that's on the big side for Byrd. Most of our offensive linemen are in the 225 to 265 range.
And that's 5A. That's 5A ball. Yeah, the average O-line in 5A last year, I counted most of your top 15 programs averaged 275 to 315 on the O-line.
Yeah, and we're nowhere close to that. Rarely do we ever have an offensive lineman who is anywhere around in the neighborhood of 300 pounds.
Or y'all usually have one, like Bruno will be back, but one, and everybody else has 5, 6, or 7.
Right. Well, but Carson's been a defensive lineman.
Right.
Now I know, he's committed to Louisiana Tech, and I think a lot of people have projected him to be like his dad. That's where his dad and I finished up at Nicholls together, and so I've been knowing Lindsey, his father, who's on the Byrd coaching staff. Been knowing Lindsey for a long, long time, for over 30 years, and they project you know how it is with all those projections and stuff, but they project Carson to be an O lineman at the next level, which understandably so because of his size, and he's got really good foot speed and his movement and his quickness with his feet particularly.
I'm going to say ditto because from a scouting standpoint, I think he's definitely going to be a pulling offensive guard is my take, in the future. Tackle, it depends on how, high you go in recruiting. 1AA, they'll probably put him at tackle. D1, he's going at Tech, but he'll probably be a guard at Tech because, heck, back in the 80s, a guard would be about 240. Now a guard is 300 and the tackles are 330, which is just amazing how it's grown in college football from the 80s to now. But, Charlie, I want you to, I want to mention this for Byrd, and I'm just plugging Byrd. I'm going to do a second here, but going to all the games I've been to 15, 16 games I counted over 25 years. And the one thing I love about Byrd High School is the atmosphere of a game. And we just mentioned not a lot of D1 kids, but always dressing about 100 kids. The crowd is packed. The enthusiasm's there. I mean, you got 300 cheerleaders. You got about 600-700 kids in the band and cheer. I mean, I've never seen so many people on the sideline that are cheering. It looks like Catholic High, like Jace's school in Baton Rouge. It's everything to that school. And I took that in, and you do it every week for 23 years coming up. But just for people that don't go to Byrd, people that are not from Shreveport that are going to listen to this, they're not from Bossier. It's electric, and the support, you can feel it. And it makes it special. Like I said, let's forget about how many D1s come out, how many NFL guys, all that stuff. That's another topic for people that get into NFL talk. But the school, academically, these kids, as you know, Charlie, that everybody, I mean, that's a school that takes school serious, equal to athletics.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's the reason Byrd has really flourished since Lynn Fitzgerald took over and as a principal back in the late 80s and was able to turn it into a math and sciences magnet. That saved the school. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is a fact. That saved Byrd High School. And the academic, if you just go and check all the state statistics, Byrd has always been a very outstanding performing school. In fact, last year, I believe they had the state student of the year. And so it's always been a very, very high academic school. And that kind of plays part and partially to part of the reason why, that I was talking about this misnomer, this misperception that, Byrd can get any of these athletes. Well, no, because first of all, it's a high academic school. You have to test to get into the magnet program if you don't live inside the district. Well, if you've been to Shreveport and you see and understand where Byrd's attendance zone is, there's not that many children that live inside that attendance zone. That's why that's why Byrd is a select school, because so many of the kids come from outside of the attendance zone and test into the magnet program and the gateway program and they come from out of district. That's why Byrd is a select school.
And Charlie, you know what I love too? If I could go back, if I was a teacher and I was going to teach, and let's just say I was at Byrd, you get to go to lunch close by to Superior Grill on Line Avenue.
That's and Jason's Deli and Raising Cane's.
Y'all got some good eateries, man. But I want
to a lot of good places.
Turn our attention to baseball. Some of the greats that came out of the Shreveport-Bossier area, Vita Blue, as you know, the Royals, Kansas City Royals, was from Mansfield. Joey Bell, Albert. I know he doesn't want to be called Joey anymore, but what a football player he could have been too, Charlie. I heard he was phenomenal in football, I heard at Huntington.
Yeah, he was. He was a heck of a player. His brother Terry, when I was at LSU, I used to have lunch almost every day with his brother Terry in the cafeteria, and their dad, of course, was a long-time high school coach in the area, and he was arguably one of the greatest baseball players to come out of this area, which there's been a long list. I mean, you talk about guys like Todd Walker and Michael Aubrey, and one of the little-known guys that, being a St. Louis Cardinals fan like I am, who
You're a Cardinals fan?
Yeah, I'm a big Cardinals fan.
Oh, man, we got a lot of Cardinals fans in the state.
And was a man named Richard Dick Hughes, who played at Byrd. And again, he was one of these guys, kind of a similar like story to Sam Nader. Didn't start out at Byrd, but parents came in from Arkansas, and he went to Byrd and was a outstanding pitcher at Byrd and ended up pitching in the big leagues. He had a sensational year, was like the rookie of the year for the St. Louis Cardinals, and led them to the World Championship. And he had to take over for Bob Gibson that year as kind of the ace of the staff, because Gibson had taken a line drive off the leg off the bat of Roberto Clemente and broke his leg, and Richard ended up picking up the mantle and really had a fantastic year. Unfortunately, his career was cut short because of arm injury. But there's been sensational baseball players come out of the Shreveport-Bossier area, and I mean, it's a laundry list. But everybody around here obviously knows of Todd Walker and what he did. And Todd not only played football at Airline, but he was an outstanding, if I may be mistaken, but I believe he was an all-state soccer player in addition to being a great baseball player. And obviously, his career speaks for itself.
And Charlie, you mentioned another guy off the air to me, B.J. Ryan. I want to give Centenary a plug, Centenary College. A lot of people don't realize that B.J. Ryan went to Centenary and was a great closer in MLB as a pitcher.
Yeah, BJ, I happened to be at Centenary. I was a sports information director. That was one of the main reason I moved up from Lafayette to Shreveport back in '95 is BJ and was coming out of Airline High School, and then Trey Poland, who was a left-hander, was coming out of Southwood, and they both came to Centenary at the same time and had really great freshman years. And then the coach at Centenary resigned and went into private business. And there's a NCAA rule at the time that allowed, if your coach left, you could transfer and not have to sit out. Well, where did they go? Both of them went down to UL Lafayette under Tony Robichaux, who I actually was the first baseball SID at.
I didn't know that.
At then USL under the late Tony Robichaux.
Great guy.
And yeah, and outstanding. And BJ and Trey helped the Raging Cajuns make it to the College World Series that year. They were two of the prime reasons they made it to the World Series. And BJ ended up pitching in the big leagues for a number of years, particularly signed a big contract with the Toronto Blue Jays. And now BJ is actually back in Lafayette. He had come back here. His mom actually works here at Bossier Parish Community College. And but BJ is down in Lafayette. And I want to say he's either I know he's an assistant coach. I'm not sure, but I believe he's a pitching coach now at under Deggs at ULL.
Yeah, and look, I want to admit something to you. I'm a Yankees fan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a New York Yankees fan. You'll find a lot of Astros fans in South Louisiana, but I go to lunch.
I know my brothers are.
Is he? Oh, are they? And look, I go to lunch, and I'm the only. Well, there's one other Yankee fan. I want to give Ragu. They call him the Crew of Ragu in Baton Rouge. He's a big fan.
Ragu.
You know Ragu? Well, Ragu's going to love that he got the plug today. But
Moscona, Matt's a big Yankees fan too.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a Yankees fan because of Ron Guidry And the whole Babe Ruth thing, like as a kid, you know, I would watch all those Babe Ruth movies, and I'd watch all the Mickey Mantle. I didn't, obviously I wasn't born when they were playing, but just keeping up with the history. And I love the jerseys, the mystique.
Yep.
And then I yesterday I met a couple of Cardinals fans here in a restaurant in Baton Rouge. There's a few Cardinals fans here in Baton Rouge. A lot of people from Missouri in Baton Rouge that love St. Louis. And, they've had some, Ozzie Smith's the guy I remember from St. Louis. He was one of my favorite infielders.
Well, the thing about the reason my father was a New York Giants and then in San Francisco Giants fan. Primarily, my dad's from Baton Rouge. I got a ton of cousins and aunts and uncles that live around in Baton Rouge. Well, Dad remembers going to see Carl Hubble and a lot of when they would play some of those barnstorming games, and Bob Feller and some of the games at the old Alec Box Stadium back in before it was named Alec Box Stadium.
Way back.
It was a WPA project, and he remembers going out to there and seeing some of the early 20th century greats play these barnstorming games at the stadium. And I've always liked the Giants, but the reason I kind of became a Cardinals fan was because my brothers were Astros fans, and at the time, living in Lafayette, you could get KMOX out of St. Louis, or you could get the Astros games on the radio, and they always wanted to listen to Milo Hamilton, but I wanted to listen to Jack Buck and the Cardinals fan, so I kind of became a Cardinals fan, and then subsequently my sister has been living up in St. Louis now for 30 plus years, so it's
family there.
And so I try to go and once a summer or so I usually try to go up there and catch a game or two, but it's my sister Mary is actually a big who's the athletic director down at E.D. White and Thibodeau. Mary's actually a big Yankees fan. She fell in love with Bucky Dent, so
always somebody, and then Martin was probably the most famous manager to get chew people out on national TV, or him and Reggie Jackson, Mr. October, would chew each other out. Or Yoga, the third base coach.
Yeah.
They just had some characters, man. My
Ron Guidry story was when I was the baseball SID at USL back then, Mr. Teague Moore had passed away, and we were holding the formal dedication ceremony to change it to ML Teague Moore Field. And Ron Guidry was the guest speaker. He was the guy that was going to formally dedicate it to Mr. Moore. And I've got a long family history with Mr. Moore, and dating all the way back to my grandfather and Mel Ott back in Gretna, Louisiana, but that's another story for another time. But Mr. Moore was a longtime friend of my family, and I'd been working for him during the summers as a little boy back at Clark Field chasing foul balls and stuff.
Man.
When all my older brothers were playing American Legion ball. And so Ron gave the invocation and the dedication of the ML Teague Moore Field on that first series. And it was funny because back then the only way you could get in touch with Ron was to call him on his cell phone, and that was back in the flip phone days, and
way back.
And he was usually on his tractor out in Carencro trying to plow a field or cut grass or do something.
It sounds like me and Jace trying to call Jake DeLome.
Yeah, that's very good. Very
because even though Jake DeLome's retired, he's the most busiest guy when it comes to horses and traveling for horses and sports and events with other stuff. He's tough to get on the phone. I was fortunate to be at USL in that year, that 94 year, when beat A&M?
the Cajuns. We won the Big West Championship. out in Logan, Utah, against Utah State. And Jake was on that team, Brandon Stokely.
Gannon.
There was I'm trying to think of, what's his name, from Crowley was our center. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago after with ALS. And then Patrice Richardson was a linebacker who played with the Redskins.
Mitchell was on that team, linebacker, Jeff Mitchell.
And we had a big offense, Anthony Claymore.
Big Cecilia from Cecilia High School.
Yeah, and the Cajuns were really good and ended up winning under Nelson Stokely. Ended up winning the Big West Championship that year.
Charlie, we got to give justice to Anthony Claymore. You remember this? He was 6'7", 340.
Yeah, he was a large man.
Incredible.
He was a large man.
And before we go, how many Texas Rangers fans do we have in Shreveport-Bossier?
A lot. There's a lot because of the proximity of, and the same thing with Cowboys and
Dallas,
fans.
yes.
I always grew up a Saints fan and a Cowboys fan in Lafayette because you could get both games because we lived right outside the blackout area, so you could get the Saints games on one CBS channel, and then on like the Baton Rouge, you could get the Cowboys games. So I was a big Roger Staubach fan and Walt Garrison and that. But at the same time, I love the Saints, but they were so bad back then. It was rough. But I've always been a big Saints fan. But it's the same thing because of the proximity to Dallas. We're 3 hours away from Dallas. That, with MLB and their circle areas, Shreveport and Bossier falls in there under their umbrella of coverage area. So, we get the Rangers games on TV all the time. So there's quite a bit of Ranger fans here.
We got Charlie Cavell, the voice of the Byrd Yellow Jackets. I want to mention also, we didn't mention because, people get their feelings hurt when you accidentally don't mention some schools, but Mansfield and Captain Shreve and Woodlawn should have good teams next year from seeing them this year. Charlie, it looks like it's going to be a great 2020 season again in prep football. It looks like the talent level didn't decline any, and if anything, it's getting better. Even Natchitoches Central's got a good team back, and if you want to go all the way to the other side, I guess the partial, like Ruston High still gets coverage in the Shreveport area, but they're going to be good next year again in those districts. And look, thank you for telling me about Bo Meeks, Coach Meeks, giving me that update. Yeah. Prayers to Coach Meeks. We're going to be praying for Coach at Airline High School. That's an update I didn't know about. We didn't want to leave out Dak Prescott. We threw out all those quarterbacks earlier, but Houghton, man, being a Dallas Cowboys, we're rooting for him to do well, even though I'm not a Cowboys fan. I'm rooting for Dak to do well.
Yeah, he's up for, the big deal is whether or not he's, if he's going to remain with the Cowboys or not and sign a big contract. And we'll just have to wait and see on that fact.
Just don't send him to Cleveland. Or who would be the other one? Cleveland. Don't go to Cleveland. Don't go to Detroit.
Oh, no.
Don't go to Detroit. Stafford's probably – no one's going to even know Stafford's 30,000 passing yards. It's just going to be forgotten. Barry Sanders was probably the only player remembered there.
San Diego needs a quarterback. So.
And who's going to pick up Rivers?
That's a good question. My son keeps asking me that. He's gotten really big into football over the last couple of years. My son Jacob he's a junior at Parkway right now. The last couple of years, he's gotten really big into really following football. And I can easily see Phillip Rivers signing a contract as a backup somewhere. And there's so much question marks about, is Cam Newton going to stay in Carolina? And, but if you're a team like Carolina, why wouldn't you sign a veteran like Phillip Rivers to be a backup? And whoever you draft, if they're not ready, well, you've got a proven guy in Phillip Rivers. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I mean, Joe Burrow is likely going to go to Cincinnati. They would be absolutely stupid not to take a kid from Southeast Ohio to the Bengals. But it is the Bengals, which has been one of the worst run organizations in professional football for decades.
But
now.
Charlie, there's hope because Buffalo was bad. Remember how bad Buffalo was? They made 2 playoff games in 20 years.
Yeah, there's another place. I mean, why wouldn't you sign a veteran like him? I mean,
they got a good quarterback in Buffalo. Buffalo's got a good young quarterback, though.
Right, they do. But I mean, look at the injuries. Particularly with all the RPOs now infiltrating the National Football League. Quarterbacks are a lot more prone to getting injured now. And I mean, look at Carolina with Cam Newton. And other guy, even Pat Mahomes, he was out, and they luckily didn't lose him for the entire year. But so, I mean, you kind of like, if as a coach, I would certainly like to have at least a little bit of an insurance policy with a veteran, in my back pocket in case something happened to my starter.
This is what I would like. My NFL team's the Pittsburgh Steelers, and so Ben Roethlisberger's injury prone. I would love for Pittsburgh to pick up Phillip Rivers to be that backup because, Ben's probably going to go down with an injury or two, miss 4 or 5 games next year. And they don't have a future quarterback. These guys, they played this year. None of them can really do it. So Ben will be back. What I'm looking at before we go, I want to throw this out. Miami Dolphins, everybody thinks Miami's going to draft Tua. But if they don't draft Tua and they pick up Cam Newton, that's possible. They might take one of these free agents we're talking about, Charlie, and not draft Tua. That would be interesting. That would really kind of decide where everybody goes, I think, with whatever Miami does.
Yeah, I mean, with Tua, obviously you fall in love with the talent and the potential there. I mean, there's no doubting the potential. But we're also talking about a young man who has been injury prone. I mean, he's had 2 surgeries on 2 different ankles and now a hip surgery. That is a big question mark as far as his durability as an NFL player. And so it'll be interesting to see if the Dolphins do take that chance and risk. Like I said, there's no doubting his talent and his ability. But his durability is the big question mark there.
Miami might take a proven winner like Rivers or Cam, but here's another one. Don't rule out the Jets. They might give up on their USC quarterback. That could be a potential. Change.
But that's what I'm getting at. I mean, with these veteran free agents, I mean, the Saints got a decision. Are they going to re-sign Drew Brees and keep Taysom Hill or
Bridgewater,
or keep Bridgewater? So I mean, Teddy's sitting in kind of a catbird seat as far as I'm concerned because he's looking at either being a starter or being a very, very even more high-paid backup. But do you sign a guy like Teddy Bridgewater to be a backup at a place like a Miami or Carolina that, you figure they're going to probably draft a quarterback, but you would like to at least maybe have somebody in there until a Tua is ready that is, a proven NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I would love to see Burrow go to a organization like Carolina. No offense to Cincinnati, but I would love to see Carolina just has it going on. I think they just need a quarterback.
As a Saints fan, Lee,
I know I'm probably going to get I'm probably going to get a lot of hate mail.
I don't want to see Joe Burrow in Carolina blue. I want to see him.
I'm probably going to
let him wear the Bengal stripes.
So much for this podcast. No, but I might be getting a lot of emails from New Orleans and Louisiana. Maybe Mississippi too, and Houma and all those areas. But Charlie, it was a pleasure to have you on today, and keep doing the great work. And there's special people out there. You're one of those special people. It's a part of this high school football season every year that we enjoy. There's nothing like it. I will say that. I love the NFL and college. There's nothing like high school football and high school athletics.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you for all that you do. I mean, these young men that put on the jersey and put on the pads and go out on these blistering hot August and September nights and days and for practice and games, and that's the reason I do it. It's like I said, it's for them. Everything that I do is to try to help any of those young men that I possibly can for doing whatever it is I do, whether it's the record book or a comment on one of our broadcasts or doing shows like this. That's the reason I do it, is to hopefully somehow, some way, it helps them out in the long run.
Go Yellow Jackets and go Parkway. You've got family connections at Parkway, so we got to talk about Parkway too. But Charlie, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lee.
We'll be right back on the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen. Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brecheen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
It's time on the Rebound, our basketball segment.
Yeah, basketball season is something I love. I don't know how many people love basketball. I know a lot of people support basketball. LSU's really come a long way with Will Wade. I'm a big fan of Will Wade. Yep. I like what he's done. Without getting into everything from last year, he's still the coach, and I think he's going to be a great coach. He's still young. He's got a lot of time ahead of him, and you want a guy that could be here 20 years.
Just look, what has LSU been doing before Will Wade got there with Johnny Jones?
Well, and then Trent Johnson wasn't a good fit.
Right. Between
Johnny and Trent, they just kind of took basketball away for a while. It just went down. And I grew up when Dale Brown was the head coach, and things were phenomenal. Dale had this place rocking and rolling. Mm-hmm. And, in the heyday with Dale's teams in 81 and 80, 82, and 86, he had players like Ricky Blanton and John Williams and Ethan Martin, Leonard Mitchell, Greg Cookie Man Cook, Dwayne Scales, just on and on and on and on, that were just phenomenal teams too. And Dale was, some people say Dale Brown achieved a lot with some teams that weren't talented. He did, but he also had some great teams, and I was fortunate enough to be able, even a young kid, like I said, the 81 team, 80, 81, 82, those were some special teams. It just didn't, you can't judge a coach on national championships only. It just wasn't in the cards. Dale, had a chance to win 2 or 3. Just didn't happen. There's a lot of great coaches. It just didn't happen. But, there's a chance that Will Wade can be like Dale. I think if you give him another year or 2 here, and recruiting hurt him last year because of the clouds on LSU.
Yeah, it should
and
be back to normal after this year.
He lost a couple of bigs that if they would have had this year, you're looking at a Final Four team without even denying it. Right now, you're looking at a team
Sweet 16
that could do a lot. I mean, they're tough. They're not tall. They're long, but it's just a very unique team. It's like one of those Dale Brown teams, the teams that Dale Brown had that he got a lot out of them. And what does it say about Will Wade as a coach? He's getting a lot out of these guys, and there's fans that are getting upset if they lose a game. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. If they lose a game, just realize they don't have a true point guard. They don't have a true center. There's no Bigby Williams. There's no shot block. But
they're not great from 3-point range.
No. And they're winning. And they're winning on the road. Yeah, they lost to Vandy, but Vandy was due to beat somebody. Everybody could feel it.
They were ready to play that night.
Vandy played Kentucky to the last 5-6 minutes, and they played
Auburn tough.
Yeah, everybody. But Jerry Stackhouse, unfortunately, they won against LSU, and it just happened. They lost a tough one to Auburn. They had Auburn, and they went in overtime, and Auburn might be a Final Four team.
That has to be the toughest place to play in college basketball.
And LSU was composed, I think, up until maybe one small error. And look, Skylar Mays to me is phenomenal. I think Skylar Mays is going to be...
He's the MVP of this team.
He's not only going to be in the NBA, he's going to be a starter in the NBA, and he's going to play a long time in the NBA. And look, I was told that by a couple of scouts in the NBA 2 years ago. They liked Skylar 2 years ago. And it's amazing how far Skylar has come since his freshman year at LSU. He was raw. Now he's polished. That guy fights for balls. When the game's on the line, he makes steals. He makes key shots. He won a game this year at the buzzer. And he creates. He drives to the basket. He might be the best three-point shooter when he's shooting well. But he creates shots that are just phenomenal. I mean, his ball reversal and layups
the Euro step he does.
He is to me one of the top three in the country. And he should be up for one of the top players of the year.
Award.
Yeah, I mean, he should be. And some people on the SEC Network were saying, well, who's the top SEC players? I think he's the top player in the SEC. Now, from an NBA standpoint, maybe there's a couple of bigs you might throw out that are different guys, but
he's got a shot because what's that big name like every year? There's a Zion, there's a guy like that. And college basketball this year is there that guy?
Well, Kansas really doesn't have a great player, and they're one of the blue bloods. And North Carolina's down.
They're down this year.
Duke's, getting the top 5 of the top 10 recruits every year, and those 5 are not like the 5 last year, okay? Yeah. Now, they still might make the Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm.
This might be his best coaching job, Coach K.
Krzyzewski, yep.
Because they're not anywhere near last year. And Duke is, but the fans are spoiled. Louisville's making a return, but they don't have any super. And again, there's no Williamson.
There's no that guy.
There's no, like Texas Tech had a great player last year. They don't have anything. Virginia had a couple, but, it's wide open. And this is the year where anybody can win it.
I'm very excited for March Madness.
LSU could be like the Ricky Blanton team. Ricky was 6'6" playing center for Dale Brown, and they get to the Final Four, okay, with a 6'6" center. Let's go to 2020. LSU has a 6'6" center, Emmett Williams, who's really like 7'1" in length.
With his arms.
But he's still 6'6".
Yeah. That's
your center. And LSU faces a 6'10", 11 kid every week. And Emmett's done a phenomenal job.
They out-rebound them on the offensive board.
I mean, they beat Mississippi State that had Reggie Perry, who's 6'10".
He's 6'10",
And they got Adu, who's 6'11".
Florida has a couple big guys.
Yeah, they got the transfer from Virginia Tech, Blackshaw.
Yep.
Who's 6'10". I think he's a little more stone-footed than Emmett, though.
Mm-hmm.
But Darius Days is unique. Emmett's unique. Skylar Mays is unique. Give credit to Will Wade. He recruits unique kids that are very versatile, that can run the floor, can shoot. And if you can't shoot the three, they can drive. I mean, it's working. They quit shooting threes, and now they're driving, and they're getting fouled. And if you're not playing a Vandy that's shooting 90% from the field, you're going to win.
They're great from the free throw line. They make every single shot at the free throw line. So
they practice that, and that's something I've never seen. Dale Brown, I don't know, Dale might have had one or two teams that could shoot free throws, but not a lot of them. Shaq couldn't shoot free throws at LSU.
We don't know that.
Boink.
Yep.
But the thing about this team, they're unique, and you don't know what you're going to get every night. And it's stressful to watch them because – when they're up 20, it might end up being tied with 3 minutes left. But, they're not tall. So if they get a big lead, the other team starts pounding it down low, and they start chipping away. Mm-hmm. And if LSU goes cold shooting, all of a sudden, it's just part of not being tall. And it's part of not having a true point. And Cavante Smart is doing a good job considering that's not really his position.
Yeah. Yeah, Javante, he's doing, the mid-range shot. He's as good as there is in the mid-range.
He just needs to improve his threes.
Yep.
At the key. Now, when he's hot at three, he wins games.
Yeah, he can go off sometimes.
But I wish he would drive more because he can drive. And he's beautiful shooting layups, driving against, because he's got height, 6'4", big bodied guy.
Yep.
And he usually gets fouled. And I love the play he did against who was the team?
Miss.
Ole Miss. He threw it to the
back.
to the back of the player, and then he caught it. That's an old.
That Tennessee game last year was pretty much a coming out party for him.
But if Javonte can get that long range shot down, they're going to leave him open. Most teams. And if he just penetrates, he gets 15 a game, 14 a game. The only thing I see having trouble, though, Jace, is when they get to the NCAA tournament, they get the wrong matchup, and they play a team that can run and drive and has height.
Yep.
It could be tough. I don't care who it is. There's about 100 college teams out there that have that ability.
It could be anybody this year.
So, but then again, they could go to the NCAA tournament and win 2 or 3 games and knock off some big-name schools that are not as good as they've been. I think this team could go to the Final Four if things worked out. They'd have to win a couple of games close, like Dale Brown's teams did.
Yep. And also they get Charles Manning, I'm sure.
Yeah, great, versatile, another unique player. Marlon Taylor's unique. Hyatt, Andre Hyatt.
Wade's always been pretty high on him.
He just started playing this year because he was hurt last year, but once he gets his shot down, the team will get better. He needs to be more of a consistent three-point shooter. Then the whole team changes. But having Manning on the floor with Moreland, that's going to change a lot too. And I'm sure it won't be for Raleigh about another 2 weeks before Manning's 100%. I guess LSU needs to end up with about 21 wins at least. I'm just saying if something just goes south.
Yep.
And maybe win a SEC tournament game. I'm just talking about the worst-case scenario, 3 more wins. Worst case.
Right. So right now they're at 18-6 overall and 9-2 in conference.
Let's just say 3 more wins. Just worst case scenario. Best case scenario, they're going to win 5 more. They'll have 23. It'd be hard to get 23.
You got at Alabama, and then you get at home against Kentucky on Tuesday.
But
so
let's just say 21 wins. Pick up a win in NCAA tournament. A SEC tournament. It's 22. I think they're in.
Oh yeah. 20,
but 21 might not be enough to get in. So they might need they might win 24-25, but again, the way this team's playing, you don't know.
You don't know.
Our mailbag.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's talk about the mailbag.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question about, I guess, LSU Baseball is starting today, really. So what are your expectations for LSU Baseball? Do you think they can go back to Omaha?
Well, the biggest thing is the pitching's going to carry the team. I've been following the baseball program and since Ben McDonald. People know me as a football TV show and a sports magazine, football. But I've followed basketball, baseball evenly personally since the 70s. So I think the pitching could be the most dominant staff at LSU. LSU's had some great staffs with Skip Bertman. They had a couple of great arms every year. But this staff could have 6 great arms if they don't get hurt. And I'm just crossing my fingers for Paul Maneri and the program that no one major or any of these kids go down. Because if Jaden Hill can stay healthy, he throws 98 miles an hour. He can be your 3rd or 4th starter and be your closer. If Nick Stortz, who's finally pitching, can get back to normal, he's throwing 90 now, but he can get back to 95. He's 6'6", 250 from New York. He's been waiting 2 years. He could be your middle reliever. If Fontenot can stay healthy, he doesn't have to close as much, and he's going to be a little bit more ready for middle relief, and he's throwing 96. He can throw 97. And then you're looking at Cole Henry, who to me looked like Roger Clemens at times. Cole Henry's got some stuff. And he looked to me like Britt Laxton, one of the greats from LSU way back. A heavy fastball. He's got 3-4 pitches. And when he can throw it by you. He can make it move. Cole Henry could be the best pitcher in the United States. And then Jaden Hill could be the best pitcher in the United States. Yep. And then Fontenot. Look what Fontenot did against Florida State.
Is this the deepest pitching rotation you've seen?
I've seen ever. Now, proven? No. Skip Bertman had probably 8 staffs that were proven.
Yeah.
The Paul Byrds, the Laxtons, OJs, Chad OJ, all those guys were proven, but I think this staff could be phenomenal. This could be like Vanderbilt's staff last year or even deeper. And Vandy's got Rocker back and a lot of these guys too. But, we're not even talking about A.J. Labus, who throws 95, that's healthy again. We're not even talking about Hilliard, who's trying to get back to normal. We're not even talking about the new freshman pitchers, Hasty, that came in from Texas. I mean, there's others. I mean, we can name 12 other pitchers, and they all throw over 90. And then we got Marceau, right?
Right.
Who could be a great pitcher. He's throwing about 94, 95. So, I mean, it's just, and then you got the veteran from Texas who sat out, came back last year, that's can do a lot of middle relief. Our little guy from Arlington, Texas, who sat out the year before. We'll come up with his name really soon, but the staff is incredibly deep with pitching. Now, as far as hitting, Jace, I don't know what
Eric Walker,
yeah. But besides, it's kind of like this LSU basketball team. How are they going to max out? Will Andre Hyatt be a difference maker? Will Charles Manning, will Marlon Taylor get his offense back? Will LSU get enough hits and homers this year? I don't know. I mean,
there's a lot of luck that plays in it too.
You would think Cabrera would have a phenomenal year. I think he's got Will Clark stuff when he's good.
Mm-hmm.
But his last part of last year, he was just kind of missing in action there. Yeah. Will Garza be what they thought he would be out of junior college? And will he show that power? Will he hit the curve better this year? Will second and third and shortstop be strong? I don't know. I mean, that's the outfield to be good. I mean, you got five outfielders. You got 5 guys that could start. Hampton is really like, he's not looking in the 3 right now. He's on the outside, probably 4th or 5th to go outfield. Who's going to DH? I don't know. That's going to be just watching baseball to see who can swing the bat against 95-mile-an-hour pitchers, right?
Right.
And Indiana's a good opponent. I mean, they led the United States last year in home runs, and that's who you play first. And we're talking about Big Ten football. Big Ten baseball has improved a lot the last 10 years. Cold weather, it's kind of hard to play baseball, so they don't get to practice the same. But that Michigan was phenomenal in baseball last year. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Minnesota's improved in baseball, and all those teams have gotten better, even Ohio State. But, you think LSU take 2 out of 3 this weekend? I would think.
That'd be a good start.
It's a top 30 program they're playing. You might see some 5-0 games, 4-1, 7-1, 6-1. And the fans might not be happy going, man, where's all the runs, the homers, That'll come in time. And then again, it might be the
first weekend.
It might be the opposite. We might hit 8 home runs this weekend. You never know. Depends on if it's cold, too. How, pitchers don't pitch as good when it's cold. Their velocity's down.
Yeah, I think we'll see in a couple of weeks, how good.
I know one thing. LSU can run out 16 different pitchers at any time. There's not a lack of arms. So if somebody's not on pitching, just pull a guy, put another guy in. I mean, let's just see how they do. But, Cole Henry, Marceau, Jaden Hill, Eric Walker. I wouldn't want to face that staff if I'm in a college football. If I was Vandy, I wouldn't want to face that staff. And they have a good staff. Rocker's unbelievable.
They usually do have a pretty good staff. That's what
Florida's going to be talented again. A&M will be tough. Ole Miss and State will be tough. Arkansas is always good. Yeah. It's brutal, man. Kentucky, they got to play Kentucky this year. They're really good now in baseball. It's just brutal, man.
It is.
And, you're going to be cold. That's why some nights you're not going to get a lot of hits. That's why you got how many games in baseball? Like 50, 60 games. So might even be more than that. But, this should be an Omaha team.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. You got injuries, you got all kinds of different stuff that can happen from now until then. But, talent-wise and arm-wise, yeah, they definitely can get back to Omaha. We'll see what happens.
They just need to hit. They need to survive the first month of the season and hit enough to win, because the pitching, you would think LSU might be averaging, maybe give up 2, maybe 3 runs a game. That's what I'm looking at.
Is the offense good enough?
Can the offense get 4, 5 runs a game? 5 runs would be probably good with this staff. Last year, you need 7 runs, maybe 8. I mean, it was a different staff overall. It was kind of short on arms. But anyway, I think they should go to Omaha. Would they beat everybody and win it all next year? I don't know. I mean, you got Vandy, you got Florida, you got all these teams vying to get to Omaha. We'll see what happens. But I think it should be a 50-plus win team that should get to Omaha at the end.
We'll see. You have anything to kind of wrap up the show?
Yeah, I want to mention, Jace, to dads that are listening, if your son needs help in recruiting, you might hear the commercials. Been in it since 91. If you need help with your highlight tapes, if your son's a 222 kid, 223, 221, 224 kind of early, but, parents hire me for consulting. We do the highlight tapes.
How to get started with the process.
Yeah, anything you need, and we're there for them. And, obviously we don't want to work with kids that don't need help. And I'm honest about that too, because if you're going to be D1 across the board, you don't need help.
All right.
But if you only get 1 or 2 D1 offers, then maybe you might want more offers. I have worked for over the 2,000 colleges since 91. And, I can be the buffer. And also, I'm not an agent. Just advice, and we do the groundwork, the work nobody wants to do. And you help me do that. We send them out to the colleges.
Yep.
And you help me with the list. And there are about, over 3,000 emails of college assistants that we have. You know that.
Easy.
And they get them. They get the tape from us, and we've got the emails of all the college coaches, and you help me keep up to date. And we've been doing that since 91 here with the company. And check out our magazine, Louisiana Football Magazine. We're getting ready to work on our 220 issue for August. Yep. You can get the old issues on the website, lafootballmagazine.com. And look, with the podcast, Jace, people have complaints or if they have ideas, feel free to email us. If you want to be in the mailbag in the future, we won't give out your last name. We'll just give out your first name and the city you're from. And we'll, ask us a question.
Yeah, we'll be more happy to answer any of your questions on the podcast.
And we'll be, proud to put it on our show and ask us anything that's normal,
Yeah, we want y'all to get involved with the show, and that's the best way to do it.
But really, wrapping it up, hope everybody enjoyed the show today, and we'll have another great show next week.
Yeah, but one thing to wrap it up before we do wrap it up, we just got our podcast now on iHeartRadio. So now if you're out there, you're listening to, let's say you listen to iTunes, Apple Store, Spotify, Google Play. We're now on iHeartRadio. But if you want to go to YouTube or YouTube channel, we have the podcast out on there. And we recap 6 of the sign classes too. That's another thing. If you want the other 6 Louisiana colleges, go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com. You can go check out our last show as well.
Podcast 4.
Yep. So podcast 4. This will be podcast 5. So you want to go back and listen to the last
first 6,
one.
Yeah.
This is hear the first 6 and what we think about the first 6 sign classes. You can go listen to that one. And this is the other 6. So the ones we didn't do from last week.
And we hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.